And we're live. The date is October 7th. It's 8:20 a.m. in the land of Israel and Palestine. And this day will go down in history. We are experiencing the largest attack on Israel in the past 50 years since the Yom Kippur War. I wasn't planning on doing a live stream. I was actually on my way to a party. I'm currently in Venice, California, so I'm 10 hours behind. But when I saw what's happening, I figured it makes sense to go live and try to not only give live updates, but give some analysis and just do what I can to provide information and maybe give a perspective that could help people feel calm during this challenging time. Because we still don't really know exactly what's going on, but we do know a few things for sure. That civilians are going to pay the highest price here. It's not going to be Hamas. It's not going to be the Israeli government that pays the highest price. It's going to be the civilians. It's going to be primarily Palestinian civilians, which are going to pay the price for this. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. I'm going to open Twitter because that's where we're getting the most live updates. We'll see what's going on. If anyone wants to join, we could do a multi-person live stream right now and get people on. So hold on real quick. I'm going to do a screen share. Cool. So rocket fire, wait, okay, here it is, cool. So rocket fire is not unusual in Israel. It's something that happens multiple times a year. Sometimes there's months where there's an escalation and hundreds of rockets are being shot every day. Sometimes there's a small trickle, but today is different. Today there's an infiltration. It's unclear how many, but it seems like there's 30 to 50. I don't even think it's confirmed if it's Hamas yet, but it seems like only Hamas has capabilities to do something like this. It seems like there's 30 to 50 Hamas soldiers that have infiltrated Israel. So there's currently ongoing fighting within Israel between Hamas and the military, and I'm sure there's a fair bit of armed Israelis, civilians that have been involved as well. We don't have any death count yet, but there is, without a doubt, going to be loss of life. That's a guarantee, as sad as that is. So here's just one video, fighting in the streets. You want to see this? This is actually Hamas soldiers fighting with IDF soldiers in the streets of southern Israel. So this is the map. These were the rockets that were shot within the last hour. And they were shot pretty far north. This isn't just your regular Qassam rockets. They must have used their more sophisticated Grad rockets, I believe, to get all the way to Rishon. It seems none were shot at Tel Aviv yet. Let's see what we have here. So there's a report of one death already, 15 injured. Again, these are all preliminary reports. It's unclear. I'm reading it as I'm seeing it. It's unclear what's confirmed. Hamas claims to have fired. So it seems Hamas is taking responsibility. 5,000 rockets fired towards Israel over the course of 2 hours, which is a massive amount. You can only imagine the destruction that causes, even with the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is a very sophisticated anti-rocket system, but there's a limit to how much it could shoot down at any given moment. And you need to think just the damage. This is something people struggle to understand. The damage can't only be measured in life loss. It's trauma. It's how many children and people are traumatized. What does that do to that psyche? How does that take them away from being open to reconciliation with the other side? Trauma often radicalizes us, right? So this is the hidden cost of escalations such as these, and the cycle continues. The cycle of violence, the cycle of extremism, the cycle of fear and hate. This is Ashkelon, a southern city in Israel. We see massive fires, and this is really a failure on Israel's defense on Israel's defense for something like this to happen. So supposedly, as I mentioned, there's 30 to 50 Hamas soldiers currently in Israel. Some paraglided in, some drove in with the truck. There's reports that some came in on boats. So this is a very planned and coordinated attack. It's also a failure on Israel's intelligence that they didn't uncover this. Here is literally a truck. Hamas shooting on cars.
Going off in
So
Jerusalem.
supposedly there's been sirens now in
fires
Jerusalem.
in the south.
And that's kind of the thing that like these
major terrorist
rockets are
attacks are coming
indiscriminate, right?
into Israel, but
They're not
rocket fire
targeted to
is now sirens are
military
now
bases. They're
going off
targeted to
inside
civilian
Jerusalem for the
centers.
first time in several
20%
years.
of Israel's population are
More
Palestinian
details to
citizens
come
of
very
Israel.
shortly on All Israel News.
Jerusalem's population is even more than 20%.
This is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem as we're listening to
very well,
rocket fire.
some of the casualties
We're not rocket fire
very well
yet.
may be
We're
Palestinian.
still trying to determine exactly what's happening, but sirens are going
Let's keep
off
going through Twitter, and then I'll
inside
give some analysis
the city
and
of
the reason
Jerusalem.
for like what
Please
is the
pray.
logic? What are they trying to gain from such an attack? Armed Palestinian government attempt to enter residential building. Look at this. Wow. Imagine you just see this on the screen to your home. And I still haven't heard from my family. I know my dad is okay, but and I'm assuming everyone's okay. They live in Tel Aviv and North, so I'm not majorly concerned. But when something like this happens, still there is some worry. So here they're saying at least 4 groups, approximately 40, 50 Palestinian Hamas fighters crossed into southern Israel under cover of rocket fire in the last hour. Gliders and boats are also used to enter. Here's a paraglider. I know this might be small. Can you see that? I mean, paragliding is a pretty dumb way to enter. You're just going to get shot. Let's try not to. Here's another same paraglider video. I think we're seeing a lot of repeats now. If anybody in the chat is getting new information, please drop it. Please share it so we can update live. I'm limited in the amount of information I can collect on my own. I'm gonna remove this for now. And if anybody has insight or information and they want to hop on the stream, I'm happy to drop a link and bring some more people on. And feel free to share the link to the stream with others. So what does Hamas have to gain from something like this? This doesn't pose an existential threat to Israel, right? Israel will not be defeated by such an attack. But they can gain a moral victory. They can gain popularity, right? It's possible. What we see at every time Israel engages, Hamas and Israel have some kind of altercation, some kind of escalation of violence. It goes on for a few weeks to a month. There's a ceasefire. What's for sure is civilians die. Generations are traumatized. There's more fear, more trauma, more hate. But what else happens consistently? Hamas gains popularity, not only amongst the Palestinian people, but also amongst around the world, because the world sympathizes with them. Doesn't matter. I mean, this is a little bit different because this is a very clear, escalation from Hamas's part. When in the past, it's often a little bit more blurry as to who shot the first shot. But the world generally will sympathize with Hamas because Palestinians lose more civilians. Israel has a much greater military capability than Hamas. So they gain global sympathy. They gain popularity but from their own people. And they also receive massive amounts of money to rebuild Gaza, right? Every time, right? Because the retaliation of this is going to be massive amounts of airstrikes in Gaza. Hundreds of bombs are going to be dropped on Gaza in the next 24 to 48 hours. That's guaranteed, right? There's no question about that. Gaza is going to face massive bombardment and massive damages. They will get billions of dollars to rebuild. That doesn't all go to rebuild. That goes into the pockets of some Hamas members. So their motivation, it's true they want to destroy Israel, but they know they can't. But they still have a lot to gain from this. A moral victory, gaining popularity, both domestically and abroad, and gaining in funds. So that would be their incentive and motivation, regardless of if they can actually succeed on a massive scale. And then there could also be just deep-rooted ideology. They may believe that any dead Israeli is good, and whether it's from nationalistic ideology or religious ideology, that they feel like they're doing this for Allah, or to get their 72 virgins, which is definitely some motivation from the more religious Palestinian factions. That's also motivation. But I think that the more obvious ones are just the gain in popularity, the gain in funds. So we need critical thinking. Is it for payback for the Syria mourns scores killed in drone attack on military academy? Can you send a link to that? I'm really not caught up. I don't even know. I don't even know what happened. Let's see if there's any more updates. I was doing Twitter. Twitter is good and on the ground reporting, but let's see what some of the news agencies are saying. No, that's not what I want. The Times of Israel is a safe bet. They're not too. They're pretty balanced. So buildings in Tel Aviv were hit. So there were rockets hit in Tel Aviv, which makes me just a little bit more concerned about some of my family members. So Mohammed Daif, the Hamas military commander, who it's crazy that he's still alive. There's been multiple assassination attempts on his life. I think he's paralyzed from the waist down. His wife and daughter were killed in bombings that were targeted towards him, and he just keeps living, this guy. So Mohammed Daif, Hamas military commander, issues a statement calling the morning's attacks and infiltration the day of great revolution. Okay. He urges Israeli Arabs to take up arms and encourages Arabs on Israel's border to join in the attack. So they're going for something massive. It's not. They really want this to escalate into a full-on war. IDF declares state of readiness for war amid Hamas infiltration. What else? So there's one woman confirmed killed, a woman in her 60s. She was almost certainly a mother and maybe a grandmother. And the only crime she committed was being Israeli. Well, maybe who knows? Maybe she committed other crimes, but definitely didn't deserve to die. We need critical thinking is asking, what is my solution? Well, what's clear is that the status quo will continue to produce violence, right? The current situation is not sustainable. We could keep kicking the can down the road. We will continue to have escalations, not always to this scale, but escalations will always continue. Civilians will continue to be killed. We need radical change. We need to rise up and do something different. And it's interesting because those on the complete opposite side of the ideological spectrum would agree with me. They just propose a different solution. They want us to be tougher on Palestinians, many of them. And this is really the most extreme of Israelis, but it's definitely a growing amount. Would like to displace Palestinians, just kick them all out, have the land just be free of Palestinians. That is what they view to be the easiest solution. That that to me is a solution. If you lack creativity and critical thinking, and just don't have any care for the other side, right? It's like if you have zero interest in the well-being of the other side, it's an easy solution. But if you see the humanity of the other side, you're not going to quickly lead to let's displace them, let's kill them. It's what can we do to create peace? Well, we haven't even been at the negotiating table for, I think, going on a decade now. Our policies in the West Bank are not such to minimize harm caused to Palestinians. And it's true that there's a lot of protocols. For example, in the military, they teach you that if you're being approached by someone suspicious, you tell them to stop. If they keep approaching, you tell them to stop again. They keep approaching, you shoot in the air. If they keep approaching, you shoot them in the leg. Right? This is what we learned as soldiers, and many, the way the Israeli soldiers are depicted is that they're just killing babies. Right? Now, while that is the code of conduct, it is sometimes abused. Not everybody follows that. Many soldiers are quicker to pull the trigger, but there is an effort in many regards to reduce harm, but not nearly to the extent it could be. Even just the fact that you have, Israel is, they push back on this idea, but in the West Bank right now, you have, and I know right now this is with Gaza, but I'm just giving an example as to how much more we can do. So you have soldiers in the West Bank. They're 18 to 21 years old. They're not so highly trained. They don't speak good Arabic, and many of them don't treat Palestinians with respect. Imagine what difference it would make if the soldiers in the West Bank weren't actually soldiers, but they were actually like a civilian police force of adults who spoke fluent Arabic, who treated Palestinians with respect, and there's accountability if they abuse their power. Right? Just that dynamic would change the state of Palestinian psyche, because Palestinians, the only Israelis they meet are soldiers and settlers, neither of whom generally treat them with respect. But if their interactions with Israelis were more positive, then they'd grow up with a different state of mind towards Israelis, generally speaking. So that's just one small thing. Another one is just, and again, I'm going to speak about what Israel could do, being Israeli, but there's a shit ton Palestinians could do without a doubt. I mean, let's be real. But another one is we could teach our citizens Arabic, right? How can we make peace with people we can't communicate with? Most Israelis don't speak Arabic. Most Palestinians don't speak Israeli. We're meant to make peace with people who we can't communicate with. We don't learn anything about their narrative. We learn that their narrative is illegitimate and made up. We have very little sympathy for them. So these are all things that can change in the education system, in military protocol. A lot can be done. Okay, let's see if there's any more updates. And feel free to ask questions. I'll try to get to as many questions as possible. We do prioritize super chats, but I imagine we'll be able to get to all questions today. Let's see, any updates? Who here still calls Twitter Twitter, or do you call it X? I still call it Twitter. I feel like X is just kind of a dumb name. I get what Elon Musk is doing, but it's a dumb name. Oh, we have new videos. Wow. Hold on, let me share my screen again. So look at this, Hamas soldiers walking through the streets. Here's the thing. These guys that we see in this video, they might all be dead already. Like none of them will be alive within the next few hours. This is a suicide mission, They believe this is their final mission before heaven. And yeah, they may be all dead by now.
יש מחבלים פה באזור.
Vajme, po lebata יש. Vajme. Vajme.
Let's see what else we have. Okay. I got to be honest. The idea of Twitter account is kind of cringy, if we're going to be honest. But I mean, here they're giving relevant information, but we will defend ourselves. I mean, it's true. It's kind of weird seeing that. I don't know. I've never thought their Twitter account was helpful. I'm looking at top. Let's look at latest, actually. Latest is where we'll see. Yeah. So here's some... Can you all hear that? Are you getting audio from the share screen? We're gonna watch something, but whoever has what's it called? Whoever gets queasy from blood or trigger warning, this is a bloody one. This seems to be an Israeli soldier that's that was killed. That's being dragged out of his car. I am gonna put it on. All right, that is hard to watch. I'm sorry. Whoever struggled with that, myself included. $5,000 rockets charged. That's wild. It's crazy how Israel has a very sophisticated intelligence, multiple intelligence agencies. For them to not figure this one out is wild. What's the Oh, look at this one. Look how easily they. It's literally just struck. It just drove through. So this is a major. This is a major military failure on Israel's part. One that will be spoken about and studied for a very long time. Yeah, I know I showed that gruesome video, but I kind of regret it. I feel like I shouldn't have done that, so I'm sorry. I apologize for doing that. Have we seen? Let's see if there's any more updates from Times of Israel. So they've just called up a wide-scale call up of IDF reservists, getting prepared for a drawn-out operation against Hamas. Clashes are still ongoing. Let me share a different screen right now. Oh, we've seen this. Okay. Here's some photos. And again, there's so much we don't know, but there's a lot we do know, right? And I started the stream with this, but we have a lot of new people who have tuned in. We know that civilians are going to pay the highest price out of everybody. Not Hamas, not the Israeli government. They will continue to exist. Israel will continue to exist. Palestine will continue to exist. That we can guarantee. We could also guarantee that civilians will pay the highest price, primarily Palestinian civilians. We could almost guarantee that this isn't really going to change the status quo. There'll be a month of fighting, and we'll just go back to business as usual. Yeah, those who lost loved ones will forever be hurt. But Israel deals with this. Israel and Palestine deals with this every so often, once a year, every other year, and life goes on, and the status quo continues. And violence will continue to happen until we can take bold action to change the status quo. We need radical change if we want to avoid this happening in the future. Hedley Dowie goes, prayers for all the innocent civilians. Agreed, very much agreed. Let's see if there's any more updates. So here it actually looks like IDF vehicle has been captured. Interesting. IDF vehicle brought. Yeah, it looks like they stole a relatively basic Jeep, transport Jeep. It's not such a great. Again, there's a moral victory there, but it's not something super. It doesn't really change anything. Look at this map. Wait, I just realized it wasn't shown. My apologies. Hold on. Let's go back. First, we'll show the Jeep that was stolen. Stolen Jeep. There's an updated map. Yeah, this is the updated map. Look, all of that is rocket fire. So a fair bit past Tel Aviv, all the way up to Netanya, which is around 20 minutes in a car north of Tel Aviv. My brother lives around here. My father here, actually. I know my father's okay because I heard from him. I'm still waiting to hear from my brother and his wife and kids. Okay, I actually just heard from him now, 2 minutes ago. Yep, we are all safe. Cool. That's a relief. Here's some more. This is a video of Hamas fighting with IDF soldiers. I don't think you could see them, but you could hear. You can see these trees over here. Wow. See, this is really why Twitter is amazing, because it allows you to gain information so much faster than what legacy media could provide, because anybody on the ground right now can upload it and distribute information and misinformation, right? That's one of the challenges. We need critical thinking. No, I'm currently not in Israel. I'm currently in Venice, California. I will be back in Israel in November. You're asking what I thought of the Canadian Parliament giving standing ovation to ex-WAF and SS fighters. I mean, it's a little off topic now, but I mean, they were just duped, right? Most of them just gave a standing ovation to who they thought was a hero. It's not like they knew he was an SS fighter. But I wonder how they came to be. Like, was it Zelensky? Like somebody just duped everybody there, and and it was embarrassing for everybody who stood up. But it's not like the people who stood up were really actively supporting a Nazi. They didn't know that. All right, let's listen to what this guy's saying. He's in southern Israel giving a report. His name is Trey Yinkst.
Here, significant massive rocket fire continuing from Gaza. This is clearly a coordinated operation by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other factions inside the Strip. But you can see here significant damage to the southern part of this country. Sirens sounding in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Days of war are ahead. Massive rocket fire continuing.
Oh, new video. Okay. Trying to break into the building. Right. And so what's another thing we could guarantee? We said we don't know how exactly this is going to end, but there's certain things we can know for sure. We also know that this is just going to further radicalize the populations. It's going to make both Israelis and Palestinians more extreme. It's going to create a greater level of despair between both sides. It's going to make both sides support more radical policies. This is going to look very bad for Bibi and the Likud. Bibi always runs on security, and this is a massive security failure. But it's not like people are going to reach a conclusion. Okay, let's vote for the more peace-oriented parties. Most Israelis, if anything, are going to move to the right. They're going to go to the more militaristic, hawkish parties, the more radical right-wing parties. That's almost certain to happen, right? Which again will just cause more harm to Palestinians. So, as many Israelis as Hamas can harm, Hamas is actually killing far more Palestinians with this attack than they are Israelis. Far more. Maybe even 10 to 1. So again, we spoke about what they have to gain from this at the beginning of the stream. Happy to go over it again for anybody just tuning in. But every time there's escalation between Hamas and Israel, they gain support from Palestinians, they gain international support, and they get a lot of funding to rebuild Gaza, a lot of which just lines the pockets of Hamas leadership. So they have a lot to gain. I don't think many of them actually think that they're going to defeat Israel with this. I think there's others. And the regular soldiers, the ones that are now, doing a suicide mission, they are ideologically driven, right? They're doing it for the glory, to be remembered. And because they believe that Allah will, that they will go to heaven and get their virgins, right? So the average soldier actually believes that there's some pure meaning to this. The leadership, they often have other motives, and they're looking at it from a different perspective. Again, not all of them, but it's and this is quite typical with war. You have the soldiers that they believe they're fighting for a just cause, and then those sending them to war have a different motive or interest in mind. So that's by and large what's happening here as well. Yeah, fish out of water. I said this as well. I'm surprised Mossad didn't anticipate this. Chink in the armor. Yeah, this should be, I think, primarily the Shabak, which is the equivalent of the FBI. I feel like that would be more their role, but it's definitely a huge fuck up on their part. Yeah, without a doubt. Let's see if we can get any more updates. Nope, this is all the same stuff I'm seeing on Twitter. I'm not going to, okay, I did show one bloody photo. I'm not going to show more, but on Twitter, there are a fair amount of dead Israelis, massacred Israelis. I could describe what I'm seeing. 4 dead Israelis at a bus stop. Oh, gruesome. One in the middle of the street. Very bloody. 4 women dead on the sidewalk. And a soldier dead. It's unclear what the death toll is, but it seems like just in terms of pictures, we're already at over 10. And I think it's still ongoing. Wow. I hope these photos don't keep me up at night. We're now hearing that it seems like, and this is one of the worst things. It seems like a fair bit of Israeli soldiers were kidnapped, which many say is worse than death because it gives Hamas a bargaining chip. They'll now live in Palestinian captivity, maybe for the rest of their lives. There was the story how Gilad Shalit got out, I believe, after 8 years, but I don't think Israel is going to negotiate more prisoner swaps. After Gilad Shalit was released, the Israeli military implemented a protocol called Hannibal Protocol, and it says if the military sees an Israeli soldier being kidnapped, for example, let's say they see him brought into a building, blow up the building. It's better for the soldier to die than to be kidnapped. That's Israel's protocol. They would rather have the soldier die than be in Hamas captivity. I'm going to share my screen again just to show. And again, this is not confirmed yet, but I'm going to hold on. What's the right setting here? There we go.
تم خطفهم قبل قليل تم خطف جميع من كان داخل هذه الدبابة.
So this is in Arabic, so we don't know, but they're saying all the soldiers in this tank have been kidnapped. Not yet been confirmed. This was posted 10 minutes ago, so this is new. Oh, this is the boat. Look, this is a boat infiltrating with military.
Why? מי זה הסירה הזאתי? אחי, זה נראה לי מחבלים, באמא שלי. התקפות בלייב.
الله أكبر.
I'm not sure what this video is. I'm not sure what this video is right here. Here's another photo of a city called Yavne that was hit. it wouldn't surprise me if we're going to have over 100 dead civilians by the end of the day. Dead Israeli civilians. The number of Palestinian civilians will almost certainly be in the few hundred within the next few days. Here's a photo of a Hamas militant trying to enter a building. Look at this photo. Look at all those rockets. Okay. Wow. Let's see what the news agencies are saying, if there's any updates there. You know, I was on my way to a party, and I really didn't want to go. I was looking for an excuse to get out. I just didn't want this to be the excuse, right? This would be the last excuse I'd want. But here I am. Let's see what Ynet News is saying. So we're getting reports that the Israeli Air Force has begun to attack Gaza. Let's see. Oh, this is a cool little, here, let me share this real quick. Here. This is a timeline. So the last update was 10:32. So here's just an interesting comparison at what Twitter can give you that legacy media can't. This hasn't been updated now in 30 minutes, but we already know that more than one have been killed because we saw photos of multiple dead people on the streets. Again, and there's a chance they're fake, but I'm telling you almost certainly that those were real photos. So we know that there's been over 10 Israelis killed just from the photos that have been released on Twitter. So there's just a different process legacy media needs to go through to report than what people can just upload. For good and for bad, right? There's an advantage to that, to both. Jews who swing snakes is asking, is anything under control yet? It doesn't seem to be. I mean, it's ongoing. I think there's still fighting going on, although we're not getting reports. We don't quite know yet. In terms of the fighting between Hamas soldiers and Israeli soldiers, I mean, this is such a new situation, but I can expect that is probably getting towards the end. They reported 40 to 50 soldiers infiltrating Israel. I mean, Israel has they could rally tens of thousands of military personnel, not to mention Israeli civilians who are armed. So they're not going to last too long in Israeli territory. But the back and forth between rocket fire and bombardment of Gaza is going to continue for many weeks. But so let's see if we get more updates about the actual situation with the military. Let's see what we're getting. The latest on X. Israel Defense Minister declares state of emergency within 80 kilometers. Here's a video I think we haven't seen yet. You can see Hamas militants. These are, yeah, look, Hamas militants trying to break into a home. So I'm going to stop this real quick. It's unclear what's happening. It looks like Hamas militants are trying to break into a home, and either someone in the house or one of the neighbors seem to have opened fire on them. A fair amount of Israelis, especially in the south, well, not as much as in the West Bank, but there are a fair amount of armed Israelis in southern Israel. It seems like that's what's happening, or it's the military opening fire on them. Yeah, it's unclear what's happening here. Oh, were you guys not able to see that? Damn. Sorry. Let me show that back. My apologies. These are hard to see, but these are Hamas soldiers trying to break in a house, and then boom. Either someone's shooting on this window. Unclear what's happening here. But none of the soldiers seem to have been hit, so I'm not quite sure what to make of that one. Interesting. Let's see some people's analysis. Mariam Barghouti, who she's a pretty big Palestinian journalist. Gaza just broke out of prison, and then this guy Yoni goes by massacring civilians. Fuck off. Yeah, that's a fair response. But you know, here's the thing. It's like what Miriam is getting at is she's saying if you're in prison long enough, this is how you're going to act, right? And then there's the whole chicken and egg. It's like, why is Gaza like a prison? Because there's extremists there. But because it's like a prison, they're more extreme. We need to end this cycle somehow, you know? It can't continue. The status quo will always produce more violence. That is certain. So this is 50 years in a day since the Yom Kippur War So it seems like, and that was also a surprise attack, which was way more massive than this. That actually put Israel at existential threat. So it's almost like on the 50-year anniversary they decided to do that. This is interesting. So Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh and other members of the group's leadership feigned surprise at TV clips showing large-scale assault, as if they didn't know.
اللهم أتم نصرك وعزتك يا رب لشعبنا وأمتنا. الله أكبر.
Now, he's the chief of the political wing, not the military wing. Is it possible that he wasn't informed? It's possible, yeah. Or he knew and they're praying because it was successful. Yeah, multiple massacres are being reported. Yeah, let's see. Let me catch up on comments real quick, guys. So Basim Tabe goes, the both sidism is quite untrue. Numbers don't lie. 95% of the victims for 20 years are Palestinians. So both sidism, this is not a matter of truth. It's a matter of perspective. Okay. Israel has greater military capability. So there's likely going to be more Palestinian deaths. So many people look at that and they say, okay, so clearly Israel's worse. But the pro-Israel side says, well, if Palestinians had the same military capability as Israel, if the capabilities were reversed, you'd have no more Jews living on the land. Millions of Jews would be killed, right? So one has the power, but one has more of an intention to destroy the other side. So both sides have a responsibility here. Yeah. To only look at one side is to not see the full picture. It's short-sighted and almost, I don't want to be insulting, but it's almost unsophisticated to view this as one bad, the other good. It lacks nuance, and if you want to talk about something being untrue, it's seeing this as one being the bad guy, the other being as the good guy. If you take a step back from your bias, from the emotion you feel, from what you were taught growing up, and actually look at this and learn the history and look at the decisions made by both sides, you'll reach the conclusion that both sides are responsible for the situation we're in. Israel has a lot more military capability, and being the powerful one, they could also do more to create change, true. But they have never had an intention to destroy all Palestinians. The Palestinian population has quadrupled since the creation of the State of Israel. If the power was reversed, there would not be Jews living on the land. So yeah, both sides. I stand by that. See if there's any more updates. Airports closed in southern and central Israel following rocket fire. So the airports are closed. We're not getting a new number on how many have been killed. No, it seems like nobody's giving news better than Twitter. Twitter for the win, I guess. If anybody in the chat, anybody in the audience is getting information, please share. There's only so much I can gather here on my own. So let's see what the IDF Twitter account is saying. No update in 56 days. Come on, you have a whole Twitter account. What are you doing? Here's another video of the rocket. So Bassam responds, and I'm happy to continue to engage. The unbalance of power makes one side obviously more responsible. Jews always lived on the land. When 8% of the population becomes 35% of it in 30 years without the consent of the population, I agree. I agree that I agree with you on two things. First, that Israel, being the powerful one, has and the true ruler of the land, right? We control the borders. We control what comes in and out. With power comes responsibility. I don't disagree. But having power doesn't give you ultimate power. It doesn't mean you could solve any crisis. Israel is in a situation where they need to make peace with a population that the majority of whom don't accept them living on the land with them. And maybe given better situations, we could get to that point, but it's not like there's a clear-cut solution. If there's a clear-cut solution that could, how we could have peace on the land, and Israel wasn't doing it, then it would be very easy to say, okay, there's an easy solution. Israel's not doing it, therefore it's their responsibility. But there isn't any obvious solution. We need to somehow convince a population that we're sharing the same land with that we can share this land peacefully. And that's not something anybody's figured out how to do. So again, nuance really matters. The other part I agree with you is 8% of the population becomes 35%. Yeah, Israel's mass immigration, Jewish immigration into the land of Palestine in the late 19th and early 20th century definitely caused a lot of the tension, and you could say that's when the conflict began, for sure. But to look at it from another perspective, when Jews were 8% of the population here, they were dhimmis, they were second-class citizens, they didn't have equal rights. So you had essentially refugees or persecuted Jews coming from Europe, seeing an opportunity to create a land, to create a country where they can be in control and be, determine their own destiny. They took that opportunity. So you could look at it from the Palestinian perspective. They came here and took our land. And then the Jewish perspective is, why should we have sympathy for a population that made a second-class citizen live on our own indigenous homeland? So we're going to return and make it our own, right? Again, nuance really takes us far in this. And even if we could say that the original Zionists made a mistake by creating an exclusive, or attempting to create an exclusive Jewish state, which I think they could have done a better job. I think if they came here and worked with the Palestinians and tried to create a binational state from day one, and the Peel Commission did propose a binational state, which was rejected by both Palestinians and Israelis when it was proposed. But I do think that its potential, there could have been a better approach that would have created a state together, and we could have had peace. But that's not what happened. And we could blame our grandparents, but does that justify killing their grandchildren in cold blood on the streets, right? So who started it? We could have that conversation. Question is, what can we do now? How can we reconcile? And trying to make it seem like it's just one side's fault is not going to bring us closer, because then it means the other side doesn't need to take any responsibility. The best way to create peace is accountability and responsibility for both sides. It's the idea that every person can do something to impact change, and that both governments can be held responsible for their actions. That's essentially what it means to meet in the middle, right? If we're both working towards peace, we're going to get there quicker. If we're under the notion that it's all one side and not the other, well, then one side's not going to do anything to get there. So I don't really care much for blame. It's never been my approach. I'm really more interested in solutions, and I think solutions is understanding both perspectives very clearly, understanding that there's a legitimacy to each narrative, and seeing how we can build this unified narrative that works for all the inhabitants on the land, so we can get to a point where we can share this land. And while I did say that I think we potentially could have created a binational state, I don't support a binational state anymore, because I don't think after 100 years of fighting, we would be able to successfully share the land under one government until we had a few generations of peace and reconciliation. A lot of healing would need to be done before that could happen. If it happened prior, I think we'd have a civil war very quickly and see more bloodshed than maybe we've seen in the entire conflict. So I think we could have potentially had it at the beginning. We can't have it now, but we could maybe have it in the future. So fish out of water you go. The solution is in the hand of Israel. So I'm interested in hearing what you think the solution is. What is this? Because I'm very solution oriented. I'm digging. I'm thinking. I'm looking for solutions. There's no clear solution. You say, let's take the example of Singapore. So say more. I'm not sure Singapore is in any way similar to this, but I'm open to hearing what you have to say. Let's see if we got any updates. This is an interesting take on Twitter. Can anybody confirm or deny this? Wait until you find out who financed the terrorists. U.S. Democrats to Ukraine to Hamas. I don't know if Ukraine's funding Hamas. I don't know about that, my guy. There's a lot of bullshit on Twitter, but if anybody can... this guy's saying that it's a false flag, like this is Israel's doing. Yeah. So, Fish Out of Water says Singapore forced people of different ethnicities to live there. They created diverse neighborhoods. Yeah, but there's a difference between having different ethnicities living in the same country when they've been at war for over 100 years. The amount of fear and hate the average Israeli and Palestinian have one another is not comparable to anything we've seen in Singapore. It's not even close, right? So it's very important to understand that the dynamic of between Israelis and Palestinians when proposing a solution. If it was that simple, I think we'd be able to get there, but it's not. Basim Tabe goes, I totally agree. And Basim is the one who gave the commentary before, so let's see his response. Totally agree on the binational country. That was always the good solution. The problem with Palestinian politicians is they definitely represent themselves, what power the population has. Yeah, so this is also a good point, right? The Palestinian people don't have as much power as the Israeli people, because Israelis can vote and change their government. Palestinians haven't been able to vote in over a decade. not in Gaza, not in the West Bank. So the Palestinian people have less power than the Israeli people, and the Palestinian government has less power than the Israeli government. That's true. But Palestinians can still rally and rise up for change. Right. So just how Israelis can vote better, Gazans can, after this all is said and done with this wave of violence, Hamas will be more popular in Gaza. Right. So that's also a choice of Palestinians to support the government that ultimately will contribute to the death of their people. Every civilian that is going to be killed in Gaza in the next few weeks didn't have to die. They are being killed by Israeli bombs, but as a response to Hamas aggression. So Hamas is, to a large extent, responsible for the death of their own people, yet their own people will continue to support them and their support will increase, right? So all this shows is that people in conflict seem to make poor decisions. They generally rally against their government. They become more extreme and support extreme policies. It seems to be true about the human psyche across the board. So we could really blame the people, but it seems to be just quite consistent with human nature. I mean, let's even take like an example. 70% of Americans supported the invasion of Iraq. Based on what? Based on the fact that they might have weapons of mass destruction that didn't even pose a threat to the United States. That just goes to show how just by pumping out certain narratives on the news, you could scare a population into supporting a horrible policy. So, you know, and compared to Israel and Palestine, where there's actually a real threat and people are actually dying, it's not hard to see why the people on both sides support bad leaders and bad policies. So we need critical thinking. Goes, my great wise mom, when my brothers and sisters would not get along, she would punish both until we got along, and that worked. Yeah. A similar approach to what I'm calling for here. All right, let's try to get more updates. So 4 minutes ago, Palestinian terrorists are continuing to open fire. This seems to be a new video. It's wild that there are still Hamas soldiers in Israel, that they haven't all been neutralized. Wow. This we saw already. Wait, are we? Oh, let me share this again. Oh, we're not going to show the bloody ones anymore. We saw this. Hananaya Naftali. We're not going to watch his content because he's just whatever. Now's not the time to be hating on these Hezbollah guys. Nope, not seeing any new. What is the hashtag that's trending right now? Israel, Palestine, Gaza. Interesting. Most posts are from Gaza. Okay. Were we looking at the wrong hashtag this whole time? Anything new here? Look at this hang glider. This is the map for those who haven't seen it yet. These are all the places where rockets were shot on Israel. All right, we've seen this. Let's see what the news is saying. If there's any updates. U.S. condemns Hamas rocket fire against Israel. Okay. So 6 minutes ago, residents of southern Israel town says terrorists roaming streets. So there's still terrorists roaming the streets in southern Israel. It's interesting that there's not really we're not getting many real-time updates. Yes, I'm going to read this tweet by Louis Fishman, who he is a left-wing Israeli journalist. Is he Israeli? He's very pro-peace. I get those trying to justify the Palestinian side. However, Hamas has no strategy here, just chaos with no long-term political goals. Anyway, look at this. It is bad. Agreed. That's kind of the analysis we give at the beginning. This is clearly, he goes on to say, this is clearly the largest attack by a Palestinian organization ever, a major failure of the Israeli security forces. Should I message him and see if he wants to get on the live stream? Can I reach out to him? Nope, he doesn't have you gotta have your message up. I guess he gets a lot of hate, but yeah, let's comment on his last post. Let's drop a link real quick. Hold on. What do you guys think? Is he going to join? Will we get Lewis on? Thanks for your work. I'll copy that just in case we send it to others. Oh, send that to Louis Fishman. I would like to get Tal Hagen on. Tal's been on the show many times. He's good at these analyses, but I think he's either sleeping or, let's see, I messaged him. Oh, he got back to me a few minutes ago. This is horrific. We might have Tal Hagen joining us. Okay, we are going to have Tal come on. Tal always has good insights. He may present a different perspective than what I shared. Bassem, thanks for sharing your story. That's interesting. Bassem goes, I'm half Maronite, half Mizrahi, Lebanese, never did Aliyah, survived the Lebanon invasion of 82. I was 30. Wow, fascinating. So we're going to have Tal join. Oh, so Lewis responded. He goes, I will pass now. Too much. My emotions are high. If you're watching this, Lewis, understandable. Thank you for the work you do. We also have people in the comments saying they appreciate your work. And if you're watching, I'd love to have you on another time when things calm down. Miss Adam, you're asking why did I hide my last podcast with Malco? And I didn't. It's still up. I've never hidden a single podcast except for one. Actually, I've hidden 3 because the Palestinians who were on them got backlash and they asked me to remove it. So I didn't delete it, but I hid it. So there have been some episodes that I've taken down, but Malcolm did not ask me to take it down, and so it's still up there. You should be able to find it. Tal should be joining us any moment. Let's see if we have anything else in the chat. Let's see what's going on with Tom. Anybody else wants to come on, if they want to share a perspective, we could also have this be a call-in show. Write in the chat that you'd like to come on, and I'll drop a link. Cool. Tal is joining, he tells me. Okay. Devin's asking when the attack started. They started around 3 hours ago. All at once, 5,000 rockets shot in the matter of an hour. While they were being shot, massive infiltration. Around 40 to 50 Hamas soldiers entered Israel, both by vehicle, hang gliders, and boat, it seems. It's still shocking how Israeli intelligence did not see this coming. It's going to be very interesting to get the reports and understand what actually happened, what went wrong. But again, the best form of security is peace. There's no better security than peace. Military can give us some security, but the best and longest term security is a peaceful resolution. That's how we should be thinking of things. In both Israeli and Palestinian society, if you're a soldier, you're praised. If you're a peacemaker, you're mocked. Think about that. The culture loves the military, but mocks the peacemaker. The day that shifts and the peacemaker is respected to the same extent or more than the soldier, well, then we'll be so much closer to peace. That is a population that is ready for a peaceful resolution. We're far from that. Tal's having some computer issues. We're going to see if we can still get updates. There's a lot of pictures of dead Israelis. So, as of 17 minutes ago, a woman calls live TV and reports that her kibbutz is still under attack. So 3 hours of infiltration. It's surprising that they have lasted that long. 21 minutes ago, it was reported that the Israeli Defense Force has eliminated a group near the town of Mordechai. This is to be expected, right? It's a matter of time before the fighting on the ground will end. Oh, Tal.
Hey.
Good morning, Tal. I'm sorry you had to wake up to rocket fire.
Yeah, I woke up to. So I woke up with my fiance. We suddenly heard a siren, but for some reason it didn't register in our mind that it was a siren. Usually I have a traumatic thing with sirens that I actually get very anxious, and I immediately know when it's a siren, but for some reason it didn't register in my mind. So I'm hearing this siren going off, and I thought it's an alarm, or there was maybe a test alarm going on. It didn't register in my mind at all that this was a siren. And so I sit up in bed and I look at my phone and I see Adar saying, do you want to do a live stream and talk about what's going on? And then I click on Twitter, and the first thing I see is a bunch of Israelis executed in Sderot, and the title is that Palestinian fighters have infiltrated Sderot, and my heart dropped. And it was very, very nerve-wracking. I don't know how much Adar has spoken yet about what this kind of means. I've
been on for an hour and 15. I've given a fair bit of
wow.
But we'd love to hear from you. You always have a unique perspective, and I'm sure you're going to give some new insights. So just take it away. I'm listening, but I'm filling up some water in the meantime.
Yeah. So this type of attack, it's unprecedented. This isn't something that the type of surprise attack that they managed to conduct against the state of Israel hasn't happened since Yom Kippur. And the carnage that we're seeing, I mean, we don't have exact numbers, but I've seen many videos. I'm in a lot of different Telegram channels of Palestinian groups, and also channels where they show this type of stuff, and there's dozens and dozens of people. I've already seen 2 videos of IDF soldiers. At least these two were dead in Gaza, bodies that were in Gaza, a Humvee in Gaza, destroyed tank. There was one is supposedly alleged Israeli civilian within the middle of Gaza being held by militants. And this type of attack is actually something that's been discussed for many, many years, that it was going to occur. Ever since Hamas took over Gaza in 2006, and they've been in control, it's always been a concern that they would wage a large-scale attack against Israeli kibbutzim and small towns on the border with it. In 2014, in Operation Protective Edge, the Gaza War of 2014, one of the whole point of that war in Gaza was to destroy a lot of the tunnel systems. Now, whoever doesn't know, under Gaza, there is a large array of different tunnel systems that Hamas and other militant groups use for various reasons. From Egypt to Gaza, there's also a tunnel system. That one is used mainly to get in supplies and also guns and weaponry and stuff like that. Hamas is directly supported financially from Iran. This isn't something that Israel, this isn't a conspiracy. This isn't something that Israel says. This is directly from Iran. Iran directly sponsors Hamas. And so that's where the weaponry usually come through the Sinai. The tunnels that lead into Israel, there have been a few attempts in the past to kidnap Israeli soldiers or to enter Israeli kibbutzim and kill civilians. Most of them have not succeeded. There was one successful attack against an Israeli military outpost in 2014, where I think they managed to kill 4 or 5 soldiers, but they were not able to get any of the bodies back into Gaza. And since then, that has always been something that has been very, very fearful of it occurring. This is also why in, I think it was 2020 or 21, there was Operation, I forgot the operation, its name, that happened on the Lebanese border, where they started putting a lot more cement and trying to cut off a lot of the tunnels that Hezbollah has been building into Israel to do the exact same type of operation that Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and all these different other groups have success. What has occurred is something that we haven't seen the numbers of dead since the second Intifada, which happened roughly 20 years ago, where something that very much defined that era was buses blowing up, many civilian casualties. It was a time in Israel where you could not leave the house. It was a fear that you would put your kid on a bus and it would get blown up. And that changed everything in terms of how the Israeli-Palestinian conflict went about. From then on, it became a lot more militant, both on the Palestinian side and both on the Israeli side. Less room for peace, less room for talks, less room for resolution. And that was 20 years ago. And I feel that this attack that occurred today on Israeli territory is going to push Israel over the edge in terms of how it perceives the enemy. It will be interesting to see how a lot of individuals who have supported the current government, which has been a lot more aggressive towards Palestinian militancy and Palestinian identity as a whole, because while they have wanted them to be a lot more forceful, the failure of the IDF to protect its citizens and to protect its civilian population at this time is monumental. Probably Adar has already shown you countless videos of just dozens of militants roaming freely into Israel. No resistance from the IDF, no airstrikes from the IDF. You see them roaming quite freely around different Israeli communities in the south with no resistance. And all that we had there. So I have no idea what happened on the border. If I saw that some people were asking on Twitter and around, how does this happen? How does the IDF have such a failure? Aren't we supposed to be one of the strongest armies in the world? And I think what happened is the same thing of what happened in Yom Kippur. For many years, Israel has been fighting small militant groups. The last time Israel had a proper war against a formidable force was in 2006 against Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a proper army, essentially. It's not just a small militant group. They know what they're doing. They have the arms, they have the training, they have the funding. And since then, Israel has been fighting militant groups, small, different operations, ambush groups, people that if you see videos of them, what they essentially do is they go into a hill, they fire a quick recession of shots, and then they back away. These aren't trained fighters. They don't really know what they're doing. And so Israel has always been on the high end when it comes to fighting these individuals. Same thing with the war in 2014. While Israel had some casualties, the Hamas and the other militant groups had far more casualties because they aren't well equipped against an Israeli force. The current groups that have, now this is something that I've said in the live streams in the past, is that in the past few years, Palestinian militancy has changed drastically how it does its attacks. It realized that it needs to be much more uniformed. The funding has to be much more directed towards training and making sure that their fighters know what to do and how to attack enemy forces or civilians. And so we've seen that in the past few years. We've noticed that there's been a lot more attacks against IDF soldiers in the West Bank, and it's been harder and harder for the IDF to fight this. And the reason is it's very hard to fight in urban combat. It's not easy when you're in the middle of an urban area with many civilians. And these type of fighters, they don't wear uniforms. They don't, of course, you see them in the videos wearing these full uniforms with their bandanas and everything. But when you actually look at videos from fighting between IDF soldiers and these militants within Jenin or other camps within the West Bank, they're not wearing any uniforms. And so it becomes very, very difficult to discern between who is a civilian and who is a fighter. And so Israel's gotten used to this. It's gotten used to this type of people that they fight. That's much easier. Usually when Israel has intel that there's going to be something much worse occurring, for example, that they have details that there might be an operation or there was a Palestinian child that was killed, and so suddenly escalations have gotten up, or an Israeli was killed in a terror attack, and suddenly the escalations are happening, then Israel starts deploying more and more troops on the border. They start bringing more Iron Domes, but none of this has happened. This is also an answer that the Israeli intelligence agencies are going to have to answer, how they had no clue that this was happening under their feet. And simply the IDF wasn't prepared for this, which also shows a huge failure on their day-to-day security apparatus. The fact that all it took for these fighters was to simply kill 1 or 2 squadrons of IDF soldiers, and they had free reign into Israeli communities. And that's all for me at the moment from what I've seen and my analysis. I think that it'll be very interesting to see how the Israeli public react to the current government, because this is their failure, no one else's. Just as any other terror attack is the failure of the administration in control, the current administration is completely at fault for what has currently happened. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the coming hours. Also after Shabbat, because many of the people who voted for the current administration keep Shabbat. These are observant individuals, and they won't know. A lot of them won't know about what just happened for the next few hours, and won't be able to voice their concerns until after the Shabbat is over.
Right. Thanks so much, Tal. Great analysis. I actually just had a similar thought. Most of my family in Israel is religious. They very well may have heard the sirens, but they can't imagine the extent of it until tonight when they're going to turn on the news. And I think that this is a huge blow to Bibi and the Likud, but it's just going to move the population further to the right. So it'll, as hawkish as Bibi is, he's on the right, but he's just right of center. And now the country is going to move farther to the right of him. The weak will get left weakened. The center will get left weakened. The more extreme segments of Israeli society are going to be strengthened, without a doubt. And it's why all these attacks are always so short-sighted. You could kill some people, but in the long term, you're punishing yourself. Even like the Palestinian people are gonna bear the greatest cost of this attack. We still don't have casualty numbers, but just in terms of photos we're seeing, it seems like it wouldn't be surprising if there's over 100 dead Israelis by the end of the day. But by the end of the week, there's going to be hundreds of dead Palestinian civilians, and that's almost guaranteed. Right. So what is actually gained from this? And Tal, maybe you could expand on this, because I was trying to explain what incentive Hamas has, and I think that they know that they can't defeat Israel, but they can gain support from the Palestinians. They always get more popular as this happens. They gain international support, although this is quite different. Normally they're very much viewed as the victims, but I think when all is said and done, they very well may be seen like the victims again.
The Israeli response might do that.
Exactly. The Israeli response will make Hamas and the Palestinians seem like the victims, giving them more international support and billions of dollars to rebuild Gaza. Much of which won't go to rebuild Gaza, but will go to line the pockets of the leadership. The soldiers doing this aren't in on that. They just think that they're fighting for the greater good, for their glory, or for Allah. But the leaders definitely have other agendas in mind. Do you have any analysis on what the incentive and the thought behind this decision is?
I was also thinking about this. It was quite. At first, I was trying to understand why Hamas would let this type of attack happen, and the reason I say this is that Hamas has played a pretty dramatically different role in the past 2 years. We've noticed in the past conflicts in 2021 and 2022, Hamas kind of took a backseat, and they didn't get really involved in the conflict. Now, this was maybe due to the fact that they realized that they had to. They have a population. At the end of the day, Hamas, unlike other militant groups within Gaza, actually control the strip. They are the government in charge, and they probably needed to ensure that their civilians still showcase legitimacy in them, and that they care about them, and that they're taking care of them. But this attack makes me believe that this was simply it was a buildup. It was preparing for a large-scale attack. And the question really is just as you said, Adar, what is the final goal of this? Because as you said, Hamas on its own and the militant groups, there's only so much damage they can do. and they can cause a lot of casualties, and they can kill a lot of Israeli soldiers and a lot of civilians. But there's two things that could put a huge toll on the Israeli public, and that is Israeli soldiers and Israeli civilians who are currently being held hostage by Hamas. That hasn't happened since we currently have 2 or 3 bodies. I think it's 2 soldiers held by Hamas since 2014.
And there's reports that 4 were taken just today.
Exactly. So those are just bodies. These are bodies that have been fought over by families for years and years and years, because it is very important to these families to bury their children that are already dead. They're dead. They're not alive, but they don't want to return the bodies.
Right.
But to have kidnapped potentially multiple Israeli civilians and IDF soldiers and have them being held in Gaza changes the game, because then Israel can't simply go out on an operation and start bombing targets left and right, because it potentially will kill its own soldiers. Now, it could decide that that's the best course of action, that showcase that we don't negotiate with terrorists. But Israel has negotiated with Hamas and other members for years now, so they know that this is a potential bargaining chip. That'll play a huge part in understanding what the objective of this mission was, seeing what their demands are regarding the Israeli civilians and potentially soldiers that were kidnapped alive into Gaza today. But Israel's response will be no short of horrific. I can attest to that, based on the government now needs to prove itself. That's one thing, which is not a good reason to go into a military operation, but Hamas, the fact that Hamas and other militant groups were able to cause so much damage in southern Israel showcases that they have no control over Gaza, like they lead the public to believe. And as I was saying just minutes after I got up to my fiance, is that this is going to change the game entirely, that this is going to be a moment in history that we will remember in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Just like we remember this for Second Intifada and the Third Intifada, the First and the Second Intifada, just like we remember the wars, this moment will be very, very historical in our relations with specifically Gaza.
Yeah. I mentioned this earlier, but I know we have a lot of new viewers. There's a lot of uncertainty, but what we know for sure is that there's going to be at least weeks more of bloodshed, hundreds of civilians killed, most of them Palestinians. Right. So again, it just shows not even short-sightedness, because Hamas knows that when they attack Israel, they know what the response will be, and they know that their own people are going to get the worst of it, but they don't care. And we know that it's going to traumatize hundreds of thousands, if not millions of more Israelis and Palestinians, and radicalize their populations. That is guaranteed, right? We don't know what new policy will go into place. We could assume that it's going to change a lot in Israel's military apparatus and how they approach certain things, as you said. But we know that the bloodshed is only just beginning, and it's very unfortunate, and it's going to be primarily civilians. And that, again, the status quo will continue to produce these rounds of violence. And even if it's not this extreme, it's a cycle that we need to end somehow. I'm just putting up a thing on Instagram just to inform people that we're live. But if you want to take read some comments, Tal, you're welcome to.
Yeah, sure.
Or answer some. Yeah.
There have been.
They're not talking anything about death count yet, right? I've been looking.
No, there's basically a censor currently on Israeli media. There's nothing going out. Like, all my information is from different primary sources of people on the ground or the fighters themselves with photos that they've uploaded. Nothing coming out of Israeli. Almost. It's very it's pretty censored at the moment.
It's primarily Twitter.
So Ed Lidawawi is saying, I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, there have also been several raids in refugee camps in Jenin and elsewhere, adding fuel to the fire leading up to this. So regarding to the raids that have been happening in the West Bank, in general, we have been seeing escalations between the different groups. We've seen more and more organized militant groups within the West Bank that have fired upon civilian targets at a much higher rate. We've seen a lot more Israeli incursions into different Palestinian towns in an attempt to stop this, but have caused a lot of havoc on the way. We know that the government has been facilitating more and more settlement expansion and for more Jews to be in different areas within the West Bank. In general, things have been escalating for a very long time in these past few years since the operation 2021. But I would say that this is not a normal part of that escalation. Usually we get to a point where there's something really, really bad that happens between an Israeli civilian or an Israeli or a Palestinian, and then things escalate and slowly into a war. But this type of reaction by Hamas is incredible because, for example, when it comes to, if we compare it to Hezbollah, we haven't had a direct war with Hezbollah since 2006. And I truly believe that it's because neither Israel nor Hezbollah wants a war, because they know that the next round of fighting that happens between Hezbollah and Israel will be a very, very large one of exponential scale. And that is mainly due to the fact that Israel has an interest in essentially depopulating southern Lebanon of this militant group completely and not having them have strongholds right on the border. But it won't do so because it doesn't really want to enter another war with them, because they know that many civilians will be killed. And so I believed, and I think many people believe, that the same thing was with Gaza. At the end of the day, while Gaza once every 3 or 4 years fires some rockets into Israel, Israel responds with some attacks, then everything goes back to quiet, and it's just basically this cycle of violence between the two groups. But this attack changes that paradigm. It's an attack that you can't come back from. It's not an attack that Israel can simply fire a few tank shells or a few drone strikes and end the conflict there, and we can wait for another 4 years for another escalation to happen. Because this is kind of how most of the conflicts have happened over the past few years. It's simply you shoot me, I shoot you, then we go back to just hating each other. This changes everything. It changes how the government has to respond. We could potentially be seeing Israeli soldiers on the ground invading Gaza as retaliation tomorrow, or even today, which we haven't seen since 2014. And also, to what extent does the Israeli soldier simply go into Gaza and take out some Hamas positions? Because that didn't work. Because the whole point of Operation Protective Edge in 2014 was to stop this exact event from happening, from a large-scale invasion into civilian populace where indiscriminate killing of civilians happens. And so the only thing that I could see happening from the Israeli point of view is either a complete retake of Gaza, where we essentially occupy Gaza again, and countless people will die in Gaza as a result of such an operation, and many Israeli soldiers as well will be killed, or something else. And I don't even know what else can happen, because this current Israeli government and its mentality is a lot more violent and believes that we have to take a firm grasp towards our enemy. But they're also responsible for this failure. And so that's also a question how they're going to react to the public, because a lot of the public still doesn't know what has happened. And so it'll be interesting to see how the government reacts to that as well.
Yeah, and Bibi is going to feel the need to prove himself now and make up for this massive failure. Bibi, the one that runs on a platform of security every time. Failure of epic proportion. So we very well may see a response or retaliation of unlike any we've ever seen.
But what's the point? That's the question. As in, so we just respond and then another 4 years. That's where I think that differs here.
But right. See, I mean that's kind of just what's been happening. We kick the can down the road, and then every few years we're in the same situation. More people die. Our population's further radicalized, and we're further away from any peaceful resolution. Will this be severe enough of an attack that there's going to be some kind of response that creates a long-term solution? Like, what does it look like to actually invade Gaza? because 2014 Israeli soldiers went into Gaza, but they didn't go deep, right? They were just on the outskirts. We didn't retake Gaza. The cost of life to do that would be quite grave. It's definitely not easy to do, but maybe that's a decision that the Israeli government will make, and maybe Hamas will be defeated because of this. I don't know. I think that Israel has wanted to defeat Hamas for a very long time, and if it was easy, they would do it. They just know the cost of Israeli life would be so great that they're not willing to do it, and they know that it would take many months, and you'd have insurgencies in a very densely populated area. Like, it's not even months; it could be just years of needing to hold Gaza with soldiers dying on a daily basis, right? So that's why we haven't gone in there. So I don't even know if that's what's going to happen. It might just be a massive bombardment, and that kills a lot of civilians.
Yeah, and I mean, we're also, if you want to maybe read, it seems like we also have some people who don't know what's going on right now. If you want to, you saw it from the beginning, so you might have a better.
Yeah, so Kalistros Callie's asking what happened. If anybody's just joining in, this was now around 3 or so hours ago. At a single moment, thousands of rockets were shot from Gaza onto Israel, a total of 5,000 within an hour. As that was happening, under the guise of these rockets, 40 to 50 Hamas militants infiltrated Israel. Some just drove right in with vehicles. They like cut the fence, which is interesting because the security on that fence is meant to be pretty good. Some came in using paragliders, which is quite wild. And there was at least one attempt by boat. It seems like the Israeli Navy caught them, but we still don't know how 40 to 50 got in. Last we heard, as of 30 minutes ago, they're still fighting on the streets in southern Israel. We're not getting many reports of how many casualties there's been. The news is reporting one casualty of a 60-year-old woman from rocket fire, but Twitter and Telegram, there's been released photos of, I've already seen 15 people shot dead in the streets. They're quite gruesome. I don't know if you want to look at them, but there's quite a few photos of Israelis that are just dead in the streets by Hamas militants. I do imagine that the fighting on the streets should end any moment if it hasn't ended. 50 is by far the most that's ever infiltrated, but it really is a small number compared to the amount of military force that Israel will call. So I think that's probably near an end. But really, the fighting has only just begun because we're going to see a massive retaliation from Israel and continue rockets fired for probably weeks. Doesn't seem like there's something that can end within the next few weeks. Let's see if there's any updates.
Yeah, it's talking about paragliders. Someone saying about paragliders, fence cutting. It just sounds so ridiculous. Still, as someone, I think Adar, you also as someone who served in the military in the IDF, while it's horrific what happened, it's not surprising because I think that we have a misconception about how well organized and how everything works perfectly in a military. It doesn't. These are human beings at the end of the day. And the issue is that it seems that our government's been a lot more focused on things not related to security in the past few months, especially since this new government took power. We haven't been focusing on security. We've been focused on other stuff. And when it comes to Gaza, it seems that what simply happened is we had a minimal amount of force stationed on the Gaza border. When there's not an operation happening, if you see every time there's an escalation, suddenly the IDF brings massive amounts of reinforcements. They bring a lot more armored units. They bring special forces to the border. But right now, most likely, in this attack, they had minimal amounts of forces on the border to protect. And if you have a well-organized attack, it doesn't matter how well-trained you are, you're going to get killed. I just saw a video of Hamas or Al-Qassam brigade militants entering and being within a station, an IDF encampment right on the border. This means that all the soldiers in there are either hiding somewhere or they were all killed. We're talking about a huge security failure on the part of the state of Israel. It shows that Israel has a huge lack of security with regards to its intelligence apparatus. That has been a complete and utter failure. It shows that the soldiers were not prepared enough on the border. And the biggest thing I think that Adar probably witnessed from being here a lot longer, I mean, I only woke up an hour ago to all this, is that the response time has been horrific. I mean, there's the fact that I woke up and saw video. I woke up at 9 looking at videos live of militants roaming in Gaza shooting civilians. But this has already been happening for like 2 or 3 hours, at least 2 hours before I had woken up. And so the question is, where's the IDF? And where's the soldiers, and where's the drones, and where's the aircrafts? I mean, I know personally how long it takes for certain things in the IDF to go up and running for my service, and it's not this long. And so it's a huge, I mean, supposedly I just saw now that Netanyahu is going to declaring a state of war, like a war at 1 p.m. But we'll see. Again, it's a complete and utter failure from this government not being prepared enough for this.
And supposedly it's the first declaration of war since 1973. So it's been 50 years since Israel's declared war.
I don't think about it, you're right.
Yeah, honestly, it's been such a failure that some may even think it's a false flag attack, that Israel was involved in this and they wanted it to happen so they can then escalate certain things. So, for example, if the result of this is Palestinians getting displaced and settlements being built, then you could reach the conclusion that some might reach the conclusion that Israel was involved in this happening. I don't want to start spreading conspiracy theories, but I already see some people starting to say stuff like that on Twitter. So you know it's coming. You know it's going to be part of the narratives. So I'm seeing now on Twitter that there's actually now, because the fence has been cut, there's now Gazans just roaming around. So I'm going to share this video. And actually, there's a tweet that I find very powerful that Daniel Seidman, who's also a left-wing activist in Israel, he goes, let me read it word for word, because he actually wrote it beautifully.
So just as
wait, real quick, he goes, this is not a time to attribute responsibility or blame for this. There will be many found culpable. This much is clear. Israel will never be paradise if life in Gaza is hell. Right? The whole idea is that just the status quo will continue to produce violence. And the best security solution is peace. And one more thing I just want to read that he just posted 2 minutes ago. The reports we're receiving are unspeakable. I will not repeat them until they're reported in the electronic media. We only know parts of this.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of reports. Yeah, I'm currently watching. I mean, there's the Al Qassam brigades, the military station in Nahal Oz. I mean, they took over an entire base, which means that all the soldiers in that base were either killed or kidnapped. And also, I just saw reports that militants were putting on IDF uniforms of the soldiers they killed and knocking on the doors of people in the south, trying to get them to open their doors to kill them. It's horrific.
Wow. Honestly, it's even worse than I initially
It's very bad, and it's gonna. It was a very. This is probably in the works for months and months, like this operation.
Yeah, how did the intelligence agencies miss this? That's just baffling.
Most likely, there isn't an apparatus because just as Ed was saying in the chat, I'll bring it. Where is it? That with all the advanced military capabilities, the network of face recognition cameras, alert systems, and so forth, I'm amazed this was possible. Mossad's intelligence is unmatched as well. So the real question is also, where's the Mossad in this? But when it comes to advanced capabilities, most of that's dedicated to the West Bank, those systems and the operations in past. Also, Israel's military is essentially built for dealing with small armed groups running about in the West Bank. They're not prepared for a proper military operation by groups like the Al Qassam Brigade in Gaza. It's not something that people are prepared for. We're usually prepared for a huge military advantage over our enemies. which is good. But in this specific scenario, it seems that they had minimal forces on the border, minimal security, minimal. There's a lot of questions to be asked here. There's a lot of investigation that needs to be happen. For example, there should be on every single border of Israel, there are tatzpitans and people who actually their entire job is to look at cameras 24/7. So the question is, where were all these people looking at the cameras 24/7?
Right.
It's horrific.
That's literally one of the most boring jobs you could have. You just look at cameras all day. Yeah. I want to share this video because this is because Gazans, not even militants, just Gazans have now entered Israel, and this is a video of one just driving around, it seems. Honestly, that's such an easy way to get shot. Oh, wait, was that not on the screen? Did I not pull that up?
No, it's not on the screen.
Oh, damn, my bad. I keep forgetting to pull it up.
داخل المستوطنات جولة داخل المستوطنات اي حاجة تقدر تاكلها خذها وامشي هاي عندك جبات مفتوحات كله مفتوح فتحناها
Yeah. Damn. That's wild.
And that's like, and no resistance, no drone strikes, nothing. Just
how does this happen? Oh, I'm seeing more videos of bodies.
No, there's at least hundreds of people dead.
Yeah, I said at least 100, but I now think that may have been an underestimation.
Yeah, because considering the entire military base that was completely taken over. Also, I've been seeing reports, probably other people have, as
how did the base get taken over? I mean, the base.
It's right on the border. So the point is the minimal amount of soldiers. I mean, these people were very well armed. I mean, they had full gear on. These people knew what they were doing. They were training for this for months.
There must have. So then it must have been a small base, right?
Yeah, it was it was an armor base just right on the, basically like I forgot what the name is. It's where you stationary base where you kind of prepare to enter Gaza, one of those type of bases.
Yeah.
It's just where they put the platoon short term, not like a proper IDF base. But again, this was the whole point of the sirens, with the rocket fire. Was a diversion. It was to get the IDF to focus on rocket fire suddenly into Israel and have to deal with that. And then while the IDF soldiers were probably, like trying to flee from the rocket fire, that's when they attacked.
Yeah.
So I see that also a lot. I've already seen it multiple times in you as well, that people asking, is it incompetence or is it intentional? This type of failure is way beyond the simple attack or trying to allow something to happen. I mean, this is a stain on everyone's, as much as I think that the people in the Israeli government are problematic for a number of reasons I won't list here, this is beyond the scope of just trying to win some political points. This is, I mean, most likely there's a lot of family members of every single person in the Knesset that were hurt in this attack. Like, this is unprecedented type of attack. It's Israel was caught not prepared, and it paid a very, very heavy price for this. And it's I mean, I know I keep saying it, but it's like I don't know how Israel's going to respond to this. Someone wrote on Twitter, and I agreed, like, we still haven't heard anything from our prime minister. Like, he hasn't made any official statement yet. Like, only a few minutes ago, the defense minister Gantz said something. Gallant said something a few minutes ago.
Right.
But, like, where's our government been for the past 4 hours?
Right. Yeah. That's what Daniel Sideman's saying now. He's like, "Where's Bibi? Where's the cabinet? The public has been told nothing except by media and social media." Now, there are reports, and I'm trying to find out more information on this. There was a party, a big party in the area. I don't know if it's a festival or a party, but supposedly that got attacked. So we still don't know what's going on with that. But
Yeah, I saw that of him fleeing the.
yeah, here my friend's texting me about it now. It was in Berry or somewhere around there. Yeah.
Are they okay? Like, did they actually?
No, there's no.
Also, I saw some reports that they. I saw some reports. There were two different reports of that they supposedly were able to get into a prison in Ashkelon, but I haven't seen any videos or any Israeli reports on that, so I'm not sure if that's accurate.
Interesting. You could see why that
But,
was an appealing target, releasing prisoners. I'm seeing, I think it was. Oh, interesting. So it seems like it was a party. Somebody's saying it was a couple of mid-burn camps. Oh, so that hits so close to home. So mid-burn is Israel's Burning Man. It's actually the third biggest burn in the world after.
also, there's a guy from Gaza who I follow. He's saying that according to him that there's not a single Israeli drone in the Gaza sky, nothing at all.
Yeah,
Like, they're supposed to be drones over Gaza 24/7, essentially. Like, if you ever look at a live stream of Gaza, there's always that's a type of Israeli drone called a Zeke that goes over Gaza. It's a reconnaissance drone. But the fact that, like, nothing, that means the larger drones, which are used more for attacks, you won't see them. They're a lot higher up. But the Zeke, which is meant for surveillance, which you always see in these live streams, and it's also very well known in Gaza. Like, you constantly hear this sound. Probably anyone who's Gazan in the chat or knows exactly what I'm talking about. So he's saying that there's none in the sky. This is one report, but I mean,
interesting. No, it's not Shabbat. The military works on Shabbat. I want to share these thoughts because it's interesting about this being a party of different mid-burn camps.
Oh, just something important to say. This is going to start happening. So this is now coming back to.
Wait, let me just.
Oh, sorry.
I've been trying to make this point. Yeah, and then you can.
All right.
So I'm flying. I'm coming back to Israel in November to see family primarily, but I was planning on going to Midburn. It may be canceled, but Midburn is Israel's Burning Man. It's the third biggest burn in the world, largest proportionate to population size. But it's interesting how I'm trying to explain something psychological and why this is actually affecting me more. So obviously, any time a civilian's killed, I feel it. But it's interesting when you're closer to somebody, both geographically and culturally, you feel it more no matter how much you want to view all life as equal. Let me give you an example for people who aren't Israeli. Let's say you're living in the United States. Let's say you live in New York. If there was a wildfire in California, you'd feel sad, but it wouldn't hit you nearly as hard as if there was something horrific that happened in New York, right? So knowing that there were mid-burn camps attacked, there's a fair good chance that I have friends there and that there are a lot of Tel Aviv residents. It's still a rumor, but damn, like on a personal level, that I feel that. Yeah, Tal, go ahead.
This is just something that I already just started to see, so be aware of this, by the way. I already saw one report saying that militants are making their way towards IDF Air Force bases and they're starting to evacuate them. And they showed a video of an IDF jet on the back of a trailer being moved away. That video is from a few days ago of a normal shipment. So be aware that fake news is going to start coming out. Misleading information. This is also beneficial for Palestinian side mainly at the moment, of trying to exact more and more fear into the Israeli public of what's going on. It's also to create, at the end of the day, by the way, also IDF soldiers and militants, or sorry, IDF command, they also look at Twitter and they also look at news and see what's going on. So this is also to create a sense of disarray. So be aware of what you're looking at online and try to confirm the reports. And if it seems a little bit odd, then try to look at different news sources and what they're saying. But if you start seeing the same news report getting shared by Palestinian news stations and Israeli news stations, then most likely it's quite accurate. But just be aware of that now, that this is going to start happening too.
Yep. Daniel Seidman, maybe we invite him on the stream. We invited Lewis on the stream, and he said he's too emotional right now, which is completely understandable. But Daniel seems to have a lot of inside scoop. He goes, there's a lot of disinformation out there, but this has been published in the Israeli media. So it's been published. More than 30 civilians and soldiers have been taken hostage. Not independently confirmed. Damn. That's rough.
And by the way, I'm seeing reports from pretty high level. I see they talk a lot about the operations in Gaza and about attacks on Israel. And this is someone from Gaza who I always see his reports, and he said the exact same I said, that there is no return point like that, like the previous escalations. Either Gaza is reoccupied by Israel or something unprecedented we don't know will happen. Like there's no return from this. This is going to change the complete political landscape of that area from here on out.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what like the best case scenario is. Like, can this ultimately lead to good? What does the optimist in us say, right? What's really the best case scenario? That this pushes us towards needing to find a peaceful resolution? Is that probably not realistic, right?
Yeah.
I need to sleep on it. I think I'll come back on tomorrow and do just share some more thoughts once given time to reflect, once we have more information. We could stay on a bit longer as things are still.
Yeah, there's at least, I see more photos. There's at least 4 more Israeli soldiers killed. And there's also now photos coming out from like inside homes of civilians of them posing with the bodies of Israeli civilians. It's very gruesome. I would avoid if you can.
Louis Fishman goes, top military analysts on TV are describing this as complete collapse of Israeli security and intelligence. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the photos are pretty horrific. You know, in the early days of the internet, in the mid 90s when I was a kid, I used to look at, like, they had these websites where you would see just a lot of death, beheadings and stuff like that, and I would just watch it, and I think it helped me desensitize myself. So I look at this, and I've become more sensitive as I've gotten older, but I guess that's the benefit of desensitizing yourself to horrific stuff as a kid, that you could look at it now, but it's still pretty fucking gruesome, and I wouldn't suggest people look at these photos. Let's see, I'm looking for more stuff on Twitter. Yeah, so this guy, Shael Ben Ephraim, goes on a personal note. I've lived through both intifadas. I was exposed to a lot of classified information and photos in my professional life. I've never seen anything remotely like these pictures. This is one of the most horrifying days in our history. I'm choking back tears. Okay, so it's not the on the ground insurgency is still ongoing. Daniel Seidman updates: journalists are receiving text messages and phone calls from residents in the south begging for assistance. Terrorists are going from house to house and taking hostages, and worse.
By the way, the video you guys are talking about with it's supposedly from a bomb shelter that they went into. So it's most likely The video that people keep on kind of referencing with a lot of people dead, it's most likely, I'm seeing more reports that it's probably when people went into the shelter for a bomb shelter, and then they were basically slaughtered.
And
there's hundreds dead. There's at least hundreds and hundreds of people dead. Like
it seems hundreds at this point, right? And I wonder.
There's no into this. Oh my god.
Anyone wants to hop on the stream, share some thoughts, we could open it up. I'm trying to find out more information about this.
So they named the operation, by the way, Iron Swords.
Who? This is Israel named it?
Yeah, IDF launches Operation Iron Sword.
What's that in Hebrew? Cherev. What are they called? Cherev.
Bazel, I guess.
Bazel. Okay, it's funny how they come up with those names. I wonder who the person who comes up with those names are.
I'm happy they came up with a name instead of, protecting our civilians.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's that something drastically needs to change, but thinking what? Like, I think that, usually I could see Israel there's a few factors here. Like, I think that we'll get off to try to reset our minds for a bit, but there's a few things to go. We know that Israel's going to retaliate. We don't know how. And the reason that I don't think it's just going to be simply a bombardment of different different militant positions in Gaza, because of the untold number of kidnapped people who are currently in Gaza. Like that'll play a very big role in how Israel decides to interact with Gaza, and so we'll have to see what will they do. We'll probably find out in the coming hours, but I mean, there isn't much Israel can do. I think that either Israel would have to essentially go towards a protocol of just allowing the kidnappees to be killed in order to wipe out Hamas, or start negotiating with them, which would tear this government apart. Like,
well, that is the protocol, that kill soldiers rather than have them be taken alive.
Yeah, but the problem is they're already captured. I mean, Gilad Shalit wasn't killed.
Right, but after he got released, they passed Noal Hannibal, as they call it, Hannibal protocol, that like if you see a Hamas soldier, or if you see a Palestinian militant with an Israeli soldier, just shoot to kill. Like don't care for the Israeli's lives, rather him die than be taken. So it's a little different once he's already captured, and you could get like a photo of him, but in the midst of a battle, that's what the protocol is. Are you all good?
Yeah, I'm good. I just thought there was a siren. There's explosions going off.
You
hear? Are you in Tel Aviv?
No. I'm in LA right now.
We hear explosions, but there's no sirens.
Interesting. I want to. Do you need a? Yeah, all good. So that's the reality of the situation. Hopefully, he comes back soon. I'm gonna share. I'm trying to understand what this is. So for those just tuning in, Tal had to leave because he heard explosions outside, so he's going into his shelter. Hopefully everything's okay. I'm trying to, there's... Okay, so this is a very unfortunate escalation. Looks like this is in Yafo, which is connected to Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv, a relatively new city of 100 years old, 110 now, but Yafo is like a 2,000-year-old city. That's in South Tel Aviv, a mixed city. It seems like there's a group of religious Jews walking around looking to start fights. So right, like you have there's a few different fronts that we need to understand. Right now, you have Hamas militants within Israel, still going door to door. There's still massacres happening as we're speaking, it seems. You have rocket fire from Hamas, and we're starting to see Israel all good time. All good?
So, yeah, but I think I'm going to have to go. We have to figure out if we're going to evacuate for further north or not.
Okay.
So
Stay safe,
I'll
brother. Thanks
talk
for
to you.
coming on, and update me as soon as you can.
Of course. See you guys.
Bye. So right, we're soon going to see airstrikes in Gaza. We might see a ground invasion in Gaza as well. But potentially the worst of it all is infighting within Israel, which generally hasn't happened. But in 2021 was really the first time we saw Palestinian citizens of Israel and Jewish citizens of Israel start fighting. And that was very scary for both sides, right? Palestinian citizens of Israel felt less safe than ever before in the country they're citizens of. And Jewish citizens of Israel felt like even their fellow citizens, who some of them serve in the military with them, can't be trusted, and they could turn on them in any moment, which many on the right have been saying for a long time. It seems like we're going to see something similar this time, but maybe even to a worse extent, because the country has radicalized since. And now this video right now that you can see, I'm going to share it. This is religious. They look to be religious. Yeah. It's hard to see, but I think they were in kippahs and stuff. These are Jewish Israelis walking around Yaffo, seemingly looking for a fight. And again, this will just further escalate it, so we'll have infighting as well. Okay, well, this is fucked up. And wait, maybe not. They're just saying happy holidays. Well, I don't understand. I don't understand why they should do it. A scheme. Maybe I misunderstood what's happening here. But regardless, like, this is one of the biggest concerns, that we're going to start seeing infighting. Hamas called for Palestinian citizens of Israel to rise up. Okay. Let's see if we get any more. Let's see if we have any more updates. Daniel's really giving good coverage. If those, yeah, I would suggest following. Can you still see this? Hold on. This is a good account to follow. He's doing good coverage right now. A woman hiding in her shelter whispering that the terrorists are just outside and other houses in the same situation. Analysts are saying this is reminiscent of men sent by soldiers in Israel's fortification along the Suez Canal 50 years ago. So there's the infiltration by Hamas militants is still ongoing. Honestly, much longer than I thought. Is it possible it was much more than 50? It's interesting that Tal was hearing explosions. You know, he lives in central Israel, and he wasn't hearing sirens. So to hear explosions with no sirens means either the sirens aren't working, they missed something, or they're not rockets, they're actual like bombs being placed, which would be just another level of escalation. Let's see if there's anything in the chat. Drifter Shelley says, I just found you and subscribe. Thanks for the subscription. If anyone here is new, the goal of this channel is really to bring people together for dialogue. You know, being Israeli, the primary focus of this channel has really been to bring Israelis and Palestinians together for conversations. But we have discussions on other topics as well. I'll interview people. I've had anti-Semites on the show. We're not scared of any topic. The idea is, instead of pushing away opinions you don't like, let's bring them to the forefront. Let's engage respectfully. Let's find common ground. That's the philosophy of the channel. So there's a lot of Israel-Palestine content, but we do touch on other things as well. And, you know, I'm currently in LA, not in Israel. I was on my way to a party when I got the news, and I decided that I'm not going to go to the party. I'm going to come and do my small part, and at the very least informing people about what's going on and trying to give a balanced perspective as to the situation and, you know, what we can do moving forward. But this is as grim as it's looked, maybe in forever. Bria Music, good to see you here. Thanks for everyone supporting in the comments and all that. It's very much appreciated. Edley Dowie is speculating that there are no. The comment is that the systems might have gotten hacked. That's why Tal didn't hear sirens. It's possible. I mean, this is an attack of sophistication unlike any we've seen. So there's a lot that's yet to be answered. Let's see if there's any updates. The news is not reporting much at all. The IDF is saying 2,200 rockets were fired. Hamas is saying it was 5,000. Bruno Mars' Tel Aviv concert was canceled, so Bruno Mars is stuck in Israel. What's for sure is that Israeli citizens are going to arm themselves to a much greater extent now. Israel is a relatively armed population, but it's much harder to get a gun in Israel than it is in most states in here in the U.S. But after this, I think one of the consequences of this is that they're going to make it much, much easier to get weapons, and Israelis are going to arm themselves, especially ones living in the South and in the West Bank. The West Bank is already pretty damn heavily armed. I have cousins that live in the West Bank, and almost all of them have guns. Some even have machine guns and stuff. The defense minister saying Israel will win this war. Hamas made a grave mistake with surprise attack. I mean, we'll see. You know, if Israel knew how to defeat Hamas, they would have done it over a decade ago. What's for sure is that the Palestinian civilians are going to bear the greatest cost here, without a doubt. Hospitals say more than 100 Israelis wounded in rocket barrage, several seriously. So that's 100 just from the rocket barrages. I think most of the casualties won't be from rockets. They'll be from the infiltration of Hamas militants. And the kidnapping is one of the worst, you know. I'm not going to go, hey, Ian Schwalberg, good to see you here. Ian was an intern of mine many years ago. Sending love, brother. The kidnapping is a tricky one. So supposedly 30 soldiers and civilians have been kidnapped. Now, it's hard to say that being kidnapped is worse than death, but it is from a certain perspective. Because the kidnapped very well may never see the light of day again. They live under brutal circumstances, and many of them may be killed. The difference is the family cannot mourn properly, right? If you don't know if your child or father or mother is alive, and you don't know if you'll ever get them back. You can't properly heal. It's less painful to lose a loved one than to live for decades not knowing if they're alive or not, right? So one of the most horrific outcomes here is the fact that there's 30 hostages that very well may never see the light of day again. Normally their demands are not demands that Israel is willing to comply. How many anybody remember how many prisoners were released for Gilad Shalit? Was it 1,000 or 100? Probably something I should ask. Yeah, so 1,027 prisoners were released just to get one Israeli hostage out after 8 years. And there was a big campaign, a lot of public support for it. But that's just for one soldier. Israel's not going to release thousands of prisoners just to get them back. So these hostages, their family's not going to get the closure and get to mourn or heal properly from this. So it's hard to accept, but yeah, a hostage is worse than a death. Drifter Shelley shares, I have a missing loved one, 30 years never found. I'm so sorry to hear that. I can only imagine how painful that must be. Let's see if we're getting any more updates. So Hamas is reporting 35 Israelis kidnapped. Okay. Thanks to all those staying on. Let's update some Twitter feeds, see if we can get some more information. We really are seeing the power here of Twitter. Almost everything we're getting right now is from Twitter and not legacy media. So the IDF Twitter just says, in response to barrages of rockets launched by Hamas from Gaza, the IDF is currently striking Hamas targets in Gaza. I mean, this was a given. Yeah, there's some pretty horrific photos coming out on Twitter. Let's see. Elon Musk tweeted, sorry to see what's happening in Israel. I hope there can be peace one day. Me too, bro. Me too. Wow, so this is another unfortunate development. Let me share my screen. Hold on. So you won't be able to understand this unless you speak Arabic. So maybe an Arabic speaker who's watching can confirm. But mosques in Jerusalem are inciting war against Israel. I say this with a heavy heart. Oh, did I forget to share screen again? I keep forgetting to do that. I'm sorry, guys. Normally, the live streams I do don't have this much screen sharing. So hold on. Let me bring that back up. Were you able to hear it at least? Okay, let's try this again. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Were you all able to hear the audio there? So yeah, I hate to say this, but the worst is yet to come. As bad as the past 3 hours have been, it's really only getting started. And it's hard. Again, I've said this a few times. Whoever's been here from the beginning, it might sound like I'm repeating myself, but I'm sure there's new people, so I will repeat it. But we don't yet know what's going to happen. An attack like this has never happened. The response is unclear, but we do know that it's at least weeks of fighting. Without a doubt, hundreds, if not thousands, of more rockets shot on Israel. Without a doubt, thousands of airstrikes on Gaza by Israel. Hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians more will be killed, primarily Palestinian civilians. This is all a guarantee. What we don't know yet is what new military policies will be implemented. We don't know how bad the infighting between Jewish and Israel and Palestinian citizens of Israel will be. That is maybe my biggest concern, that we'll have like a mini civil war. We don't yet know if there will be a ground invasion of Gaza. Yeah, but what else do we know? We know that Hamas will likely, by the end of this, will be more popular amongst Palestinians and more popular in the international community, and will receive immense funding to rebuild Gaza, much of which will go to line the pockets of their leaders. That's part of their incentive in doing this. So yeah, there's a fair bit we can know, and it's all pretty grim. And a fair bit we don't know, also quite grim. Hey, and I'm generally an optimist, but it seems like we're in for weeks of bloodshed, and again, weeks of bloodshed. It doesn't end with bloodshed, because that bloodshed causes lifetime of trauma, fear, and hate. So that's really what we can expect. And how do you get a population that hates one another to reconcile? Right? A lot of people say, let's have one state where we're all equal. How do you have one state where the population hates each other, where they don't speak the same language? What does that look like? It seems like Drifter Shelley, you just became a new member. Thank you. Thank you for the support. And Lidawi with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Thanks for you guys. Thanks for going live and informing us. It's my absolute pleasure. Just unfortunate circumstances. So we have a comment from Facebook. I can't read your name because it's in Arabic, but if you want to type it out, I will address you by name. You go there, fighting to regain their land, free Palestine. Yes, it's just violence against civilians causes Palestinians to lose land and lose rights. It causes a restriction of their freedom. It should point to Palestinian violence that has caused Palestinian freedom. Hold on 1 second. So yeah, I recognize why they're fighting, but if they're fighting will do nothing but further harm them, does that make sense to fight in this way? Is there a better way to fight? Is there a better approach? I think there is. And yeah, we took a little break from doing, these live streams. I've been very busy building my community and company called Grateful Giraffes. I'm not going to get into it right now, but we did, for the past year, I haven't done too many live streams, but starting a month ago, I've been consistent with at least 1 week. So the channel's back. We're doing 1 live stream a week. Although I think I'll probably try to go live every day just for the next few weeks to update what's going on. If you like this content, we appreciate the support. You can subscribe. You can support us on Patreon. You can become a member here on YouTube. The more resources this channel creates, I pump that back into the show. The idea is to really hire people to help me book more interesting guests and help, bring on people for discussions and get cooler thumbnails, right? So there's a lot your support does to help make this channel better, to help us get more reach. And ultimately, the idea is to just bring this reconciliatory approach to conversations between people in conflict, whether it's Israelis and Palestinians, whether it's a Jew speaking to an anti-Semite. We want to really touch on all the topics that people often shy away from and show that we can engage on these topics respectfully. So that's really the goal of this channel, and any support is greatly appreciated. If you want to support the show, you can really see there's a link in the description. Actually, I didn't put any links in this description. But I will add that now in case anybody wants to support. Or there's like a little member button that you could press, or you could leave a super chat. Those are all the ways to support, and it's greatly appreciated. I am going to look to see if there's updates. Updates coming in every few minutes. Let's see. Nothing on Ynet. Let's see what Times of Israel saying. So they're saying the head of one of the towns in the south was killed in a gunfight. So he was armed and he took up arms against Hamas and he was killed.
I love this style of the Airbnb that we select.
The other one was also really sick, right?
Yeah.
That was such good.
I like that one a lot too, yes.
Sweet, thank you for the kind words. Very much appreciated. Let's see. I really do enjoy live streaming. I love bringing forth these conversations. I just hate to do it under these, in these situations. They're normally a little happier, even though we're talking about difficult things. They're normally a little bit more happy and upbeat, but it feels irresponsible for me to be upbeat right now. I'm sure y'all can understand why. It's also late. It's 1 a.m. here. I probably will wind it down soon, even though I do want to stay on with you all. Hold on 1 second. I'm just adding more information to the description, and then we're going to do one last round of updates, take some questions, and then I think I'm going to sign off for the night. But you have my word that I'll probably come on daily for the next few weeks just to give updates on everything going on. We want to do this in not only give the information in real time, but also just give a balanced analysis, which is something that's so hard to find. You watch the news, you get one-sided information. You go on Twitter, you get something similar. Here, we really try to break it down. And me, on a personal note, I try to even present the argument that I don't necessarily believe, but that is, for example, let's say there's a belief that is commonly believed amongst Israelis that I disagree with. If there's not an Israeli on the channel to make that case, I will make it for them just so that view is represented, and I will do the same for Palestinians or any topic we're discussing. So that's really part of the approach here. Hold on 1 second, and we'll have a few more updates. Cool. Let's see. Okay, well, a lot of interesting. The journalists I've been following on Twitter, both of them just said they're taking a break. They're signing out. Terrible. They're saying they need a break, so which is understandable. Let's see what's going on. Yeah, so now we're starting to see the retaliations. Joseph Carlin's asking, so where am I? I'm actually currently in the United States. I'm in Venice, California right now. I lived in Israel the past 14 years. I've been in Venice now for the past year building a company. I am going back to Israel at the end of this month. Hopefully, I'm not going back to a war zone. And hopefully there are actually flights. It's the longest I've gone without seeing my family, so I miss them dearly. And I did hear from my family they are all safe. But I know that it seems there's reports that there was a mini festival that was attacked, that it seems like I may have had friends there. So that's what's really sitting on my mind the most now. I'm waiting to get reports of the situation at the festival. Give me a moment. So we're starting to see videos of the retaliation. So this is an airstrike by Israel in Gaza. Right. So this is one of what will be probably a few thousand over the next few weeks. Now here's the thing. Israel in these attacks, they don't target civilians. They target weapons depots or Hamas members. But the thing is, Gaza is very densely populated. Weapons depots are built in civilian neighborhoods. Hamas members are living in civilian neighborhoods. So these bombs, despite who's targeted, civilians are killed. So there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of dead civilians in the next few weeks. It seems like there's already, we're not getting any reports from the Israeli media, very little, but based on photos that are coming out on Twitter, it seems like there will be, an hour ago, I estimated it'll be at least 100. I think it'll probably be more. I think we might have a few hundred dead Israelis by the end of the day. And again, by the time all is said and done, the number will be at a few thousand, primarily Palestinians. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, I'm not seeing. I'll show another video that many Israelis are generally disturbed by. This is in the West Bank. Palestinians are cheering because they. Yeah, just seeing that little girl with the gun, that's disturbing, you know. Okay, I see some comments. Let's get some comments. So Ed Lidawi, a great comment. You know, this is very much our philosophy here, but 75 years of violence has not accomplished anything but radicalizing, traumatizing, and killing innocent civilians. Acts of compassion, mercy, and grassroots effort is the way and will be contagious. Very much agreed, and that's what we're trying to do here. Martin Wincello, writes, hey, my name is Martin. I'm writing from Chile. The news is saying there are 5,000 missiles. Is that true? Is that just Hamas propaganda? What is the level of destruction of the missiles? So good question, Martin. Hamas is saying they shot 5,000. Israel is saying they shot 2,200. I would guess it's probably closer to 2,200. It's unclear. I saw one report that over 100 civilians have been injured from rocket fire, but it seems like the majority of the deaths are going to come from the military Hamas militant insurgency within Israel, where reports of 50 soldiers, but it seems like it might be more. 50 or more Hamas militants entered Israel. Supposedly they've taken over a base. Over 30 soldiers and civilians have been kidnapped and brought back to Gaza. There have been multiple massacres. And as of 15 minutes ago, there were still reports that they were going door to door trying to break into homes to kill the people inside. So it's still ongoing. We don't know the extent of it yet. Natalie's asking, is it really that bad situation as they're showing on TV? So I would rarely say this. I actually think it might be worse than what they're showing on TV. I don't think we know the full extent of it. Obviously, normally the media, makes things seem worse than it actually is. One obvious example, I don't know if you all saw, but Burning Man, I was there this year, and it rained and we got stuck there for a few extra days, and the media made it seem like there was this humanitarian disaster and that we were starving to death. But most people were having a great time partying in the mud. Some people, I guess, were in struggle city, but it wasn't nowhere near what the media made it out to be. But here, I think it's the Israeli media is not. There hasn't been too much information released. We don't know anything about how many people have been killed yet. There's a lot of information that has not yet been released, so we don't know. Ahmad Elian says, I appreciate you keeping it balanced. I have to disagree with the last statement. Jews and Muslims lived in Palestine. I would say prior to the 20th century, we lived in peace. But once the Zionist movement began, that's when tensions arose. And then there's the 1912 massacre in Hebron. Right, so that the violence between Jews and Palestinians living on the land began prior to 1948, and then the question is, what is peace? When Jews were living on the land for the past few thousand years, they lived as second-class citizens. They didn't have the same rights as Muslims. So many say that's not true peace. Joseph's asking, where's my family? Yeah, I did hear from my family. My family's safe. My sister and mom are in northern Israel, so they're far away from it. Hopefully Hezbollah doesn't get involved, because both my sister and mom are very close to the northern border. My brother and my dad are in central Israel. And yeah, so they did have to. There were rocket sirens. Rockets were shot at their cities, but I heard from both of them, and last I heard, all good. Thanks for asking. Ed, you're saying airstrikes always kill civilians. There's no defending that. Did it seem like I made a defense of it? I'm pretty sure that was my claim, that civilians will be killed from these airstrikes. Thank you. I am also hoping they're safe, and I'm waiting for. I really would like more information about this party that seems to have been attacked, because I'm afraid I may have had friends there. Yeah, I'm getting reports that we didn't know some people there. So just for some, background, I've served in the Israeli military. I've also been involved in different peace building initiatives for the past 8 years. My views as a soldier were not the same as my views as a peace builder. But in my 14 years living in Israel, I lost 4 friends to either terror attacks or war. And I'm not a unique case. Every Israeli has lost a loved one. Every Palestinian has lost a loved one to this conflict. Unfortunately, the majority of people seem to be radicalized when they lose a loved one. It makes them hate and fear the other side more. For others, it has a different impact. They see how bad war is, and they understand that let's find a solution. Let's find a peaceful solution, right? If bloodshed made people less radical, we'd already have peace. So while I've lost 4 friends, I by no means am numb to it, and I hope it stays at 4. I'm waiting to get more information about this party and who I knew there, or who I know there. I'm going to give it another 15 minutes, and then we're going to wrap it up. We're already going on 2 hours, 52 minutes. It's 1:15 a.m. Hold on, I'm plugging in my computer. Oh, yeah. So, Ed, you're saying that I said they don't target civilians, but only militant compounds, but there aren't really true compounds, but rather locations within civilian communities. Yeah. But intention does matter, right? There's a difference between first-degree murder and manslaughter. So someone's actions should be judged on their intention. And I've been very, very critical of the Israeli military and also their policy in Gaza. And the airstrikes, by and large, have not only been destructive to Palestinian lives, they're just entirely counterproductive to achieving peace long term. But let's describe the matter truthfully, that when Israel strikes a building in Gaza that they know civilians will be in it, they warn them. They drop flyers, and they warn. They even call the people in the building and have them evacuate, right? So they go through quite extreme measures to reduce civilian harm. Civilians are still killed, and it's horrible. But that shouldn't be judged the same way as indiscriminately attacking civilians. Now, it's true that because Israel's powerful, they almost have the privilege of choosing who to target because they have the sophisticated military. The claim can be made that Hamas doesn't have much power, so they'll attack anybody they can, including civilians. That's why I don't try to attribute who's more moral, who's more right. I just don't think it's the right approach. I think our morality is often dependent on our upbringing, and if we have an upbringing where we're constantly being dominated or oppressed by a group of people, our morality, that is going to impact, our morality towards that group of people. So I've never been one for blame, finger pointing. I believe that there's a lot both sides can do. And I think if we're going to achieve peace, both sides need to do a lot. We need to stop looking at this as good versus bad, right versus wrong. Both sides have a lot of legitimacy to their narrative, and both sides have done horrific things to one another. Both sides need to take responsibility and do what they can to come closer to peaceful resolution. And I stand by that. Yeah, you're asking, does Tal have a Twitter account? Yeah, he does have a Twitter account. Let me send it. I'm going to drop it in the chat. Let me just find it real quick. Yeah, I'm going to drop... I dropped his Twitter and I dropped mine as well if anybody's interested. Adalberto asked how being indigenous is a factor. So I'm going to need a bit more information. I could talk about the indigeneity of the Israeli and Palestinian people if that's something you're interested in. But I don't think it was brought up on the stream. But I am happy to talk about it. Both Jews and Palestinians consider themselves indigenous. Now, the term indigenous actually has a quite loose meaning. There's different definitions, and according to some definitions, Jews are not indigenous. According to other definitions, Palestinians are not indigenous. So conveniently, each side uses the version of indigeneity, which makes themselves indigenous, but not the other. Quite convenient. I actually think it's great that it's loosely defined because I think we should accept that we're all indigenous. Both Jews and Palestinians are indigenous to this land, and that should be a commonality between us, right? We both have a deep history and deep roots on this land. Let's live here together and share this land. So the conversation around indigeneity is often used to divide Israelis and Palestinians, but I think it can be used to unite us. Ed, so you're asking why not send a drone to pinpoint attack rather than blanket bomb? So they actually do a lot of pinpoint attacks, but those also kill civilians. Even a pinpoint attack, like you have debris and glass flying everywhere. Some of the buildings aren't so stable, so they cause buildings to collapse. But it's not all pinpoint attacks, but even those kill people. You just can't, you can't drop that many bombs on a heavily populated place and not have civilian deaths. Let me give you an example. In the 2014 war with Gaza, Israel dropped 4,000 bombs on Gaza. You had 1,000 people, militants and civilians total killed. 4 bombs per 1 person in one of the most densely populated places on earth. Again, any civilian killed is too many. But that's actually an impressive military feat to drop so many bombs on such a highly populated place and kill so little people. You could only do that if you're trying really hard to reduce civilian harm. So when Israel's dropping these bombs, they're trying to do maximal infrastructure damage, primarily infrastructure that supports the military, that supports Hamas and other militant factions, and they're trying to kill as many militants as possible. But just think about that number and make sense out of it. How do you drop 4,000 bombs on a heavily populated, densely populated place and only kill 1,000 people? You need to be trying to not kill people. Jack W goes, I think the word indigenous is kind of blown in this conflict. What happened is what happened. We need to focus on solidarity. I agree, but I also think indigeneity can help bring solidarity if we accept that we're all indigenous, right? So it could be used as a unifying force, but it's just used to divide us. So Byron's saying Jews are not indigenous. So again, it really depends on the definition you use, but the Jewish people came from the land of Israel, right? This is where the culture, the people, and the religion was born. We came from Israel. We were displaced and we returned. did we lose our indigenous status when we're in the diaspora? So let me give you an example. Let's say you had Native Americans, and there's no example of this, but I want to give you an example. It's a hypothetical. Let's say Native Americans were taken by British back to England, and they lived in England, and they had their own neighborhoods. They lived there for hundreds of years, and they decided they wanted to move back to America, to their indigenous homeland. Would they no longer be indigenous? They would still be indigenous. So that's the indigeneity of the Jewish people. So Byron's saying Israel had heavily pulled dreadlock hair. This is not a Jew. So you're saying how Jews today look different than they did thousands of years ago? Yeah. Thousands of years in a different climate where you're occasionally intermarrying is going to change how someone looks. But when I used to have hair, it was definitely what you'd call a Jewfro, not hair that's commonly seen amongst non-Jews. And Ashkenazi DNA, which I am, I'm 99.8% Ashkenazi, but Ashkenazi DNA, if you break it down, it's around 50% European, 50% Middle Eastern. Middle Eastern from the Levant. So yeah, we are indigenous, but we intermixed a little bit. So we look a bit different these days. Another thing is, not only did I have Jufro, but like I don't use sunscreen, I don't get burnt, right? So my skin does very well in the sun. Probably not. That's not such a European trait, I would guess. So Lizzie P goes, Palestinians will never get an ounce of support from the global community again. So I don't think that's true. I think a lot of people who are really pro-Palestine are actually rooting for Palestinians now. They said, they'll say Israel had this coming. This is what happens when you lock people up in a cage. We'll already see it justified. And people also have short memories, right? So right now we're seeing something horrific happening, and we're seeing hundreds of Israelis massacred. We still don't have the numbers, but it seems like it's going to be in the hundreds. But in the following weeks, we're going to see potentially thousands of Palestinians killed in airstrikes. And people have short memories, so they're going to see the horrific scenes from Gaza. They're going to see photos of children that have been blown up, and they're going to forget. So I don't think this is really going to change perception on such a noticeable scale. So Adalberto goes, the Zionist definition of indigenous is a new one. No, it's actually not quite a new one. It's not. The definition of indigenous is not that old, and there's been a few different ones, and all the definitions are in the few decades old. Some of them talk about like a relationship with a colonial entity, right? So if you look at like how indigeneity was originally described, it was to describe a relationship with a native population and those who came as colonizers. And in that sense, Palestinians are the indigenous people. Palestinians are not indigenous in the sense that they did not, and this is tricky, so I'm going to clarify this, but they did not, their culture, their religion did not come from Palestine. It came from Arabia. That said, a lot of Palestinians actually have Jewish DNA. It's Jews that never left the land of Israel but got Islamicized during the Arab conquests, right? So in a sense, their culture, their religion, their language didn't come from the land. It came from Arabia, but they still have a lineage that has been on the land for thousands of years. So again, this is how both sides argue that one is indigenous and the other isn't. So Palestinians, again, I'll repeat that, Palestinians had a relationship with what is seemingly a colonial entity, which is the Zionist movement. But their culture, religion, and language didn't come from the land. Jews came, returned using settler colonial tactics, but they returned to the land from which they came. Both are indigenous. And to just try to say one is and the other isn't helpful when you could see that there's a clear case to be made. Now, so here's something interesting. A lot of people say they're not indigenous; they're colonizers, and then Zionists will say we're not colonizers, we're indigenous. Well, check this out. Things are a little more nuanced, right? Not everything's black and white. So I like to say Zionism is an indigenous rights movement that used settler colonial tactics to achieve its goals. Again, Zionism is an indigenous rights movement that used settler colonial tactics to achieve its goals. That's a radical statement. It pisses off both sides, but it also gives both sides something to agree with. So I think these lines like that, this framing, is part of how we can create peace. If we could start to build a unified narrative, find language that encompasses and incorporates the narratives of both sides. So that's something I spend a fair amount of time thinking about. So Cody Razor saying, I don't know much about the situation between the two, but the way Hamas invaded and decided to take innocent lives, I say Israel should wipe them off the map. Just my opinion. So if you say, are you saying they should just wipe all Palestinians off the map? Because, I don't think that the response to massacring Israeli civilians should be genocide. Doesn't seem like a good solution. If you're saying we should wipe Hamas off the map, that would be great if we did, but we don't really have a way to do it that easily. If we did, it would have been done. Hamas, they rule Gaza. Gaza is very heavily populated. In order to wipe them off, in order to destroy Hamas, it's either destroy all of Gaza, which will come with hundreds of thousands, if not 1 million plus civilian deaths, or a ground invasion, which would take potentially years and would cost the lives of potentially thousands of Israeli soldiers to do. That's why we haven't done it yet. Very densely populated place. It would be kind of like, remember how quickly it took the U.S. to capture Baghdad, right? There's that famous speech Bush gave with the mission accomplished. It was a few weeks after the invasion. But then for years, and very few Americans were killed just to capture Baghdad. Then we have years of insurgency where thousands of Americans were killed because guerrilla warfare is very hard to fight against. So that's the situation that Israel would be in order to destroy Hamas. So it's really not that simple. Yeah, so Lizzie, you saw the video of them dragging the dead woman through the street. That's pretty fucked up. So we need critical thinking. I've always liked this perspective. When Jews marry Palestinians and Palestinians marry Jews in large numbers, there'll be more peace in the Middle East. Yeah, it's just a very unpopular opinion, even amongst those who support peace. Like, I was at this little peace gathering between Israelis and Palestinians, and my friend proposed that, and both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, were like, no, that's not the solution. I think left-wing Israelis are much more open to it. And I'm just going to throw out a number. This isn't scientific, but I'm taking a guess here. If you were to poll Israelis on how they feel about intermarriage, I think probably 20% would be okay with it. Maybe 30. If you ask Palestinians, it'd probably be around 3-4%. So there is a disparity there, but it's still the minority of both sides. Someone you want to see a photo of my fro days? Yeah, I could do that. Should we end it on something a little more positive? And then, there have been a fair bit of chat, so it means hopefully we do have some updates by the time we do all this, but I could show you a picture of myself when I used to have a little fro. It's not a real one, but it's like back in when I was like 15 or something. It's a pretty funny photo. Where do I find it? Remember when Facebook used to be the coolest social media platform ever? What a bummer that it failed, because in a certain sense, it really provides the best utility. Uh, although I think now Twitter is trying to do a lot of that same stuff. But hold on. You ready for this one? So here's me. I was probably 15, smoking a hookah with a cigarette behind my ear, thinking I'm a little gangsta, wearing an ugly ass button down shirt. But look at that O. Look at the smoothness of that O. See, I got a little Jufra. They used to call it a Brillo pad. Anyways, that's me. That's me when I had hair. Byron Bull, I know this narrative. Jews are from Europe. Are you by any chance a Hebrew Israelite? Because that's the narrative you're pushing. Jews have lived in Europe for a long time, but before that, they came from the land of Israel. And here's the thing: I'm open-minded. I could have my mind changed. We have DNA tests. There's a lot of data, right? I like data. It's better than just random internet opinions. DNA tests give us a lot of information on where Jews came from. A lot of their DNA is Middle Eastern. You have a very strong opinion about Jews being European. Give me some data. Show me some DNA tests. Ball's in your court, brother. So, Cody, you're saying you meant just the terrorists. Yeah, I agree. If we could just kill terrorists, it's just easier said than done, you know? Yeah, Adalberto, Judaism doesn't allow for interfaith marriage. That is true. But, 50% of Jewish Israelis are secular, and many of them, not only secular, are atheists, right? You have a very high percentage of atheists in Israel who are Jewish, right? Because Judaism is a religion, but it's also a people, or you could look at it as like an ethnic group. So like, I'm Jewish, but I don't believe in the Jewish religion. I'm agnostic when it comes to religious belief. Agnostic or atheist, depending on how you wish to define it or which God you're talking about. Yeah, we could get into that on a different stream. Cool. We'll do one more update, then I'll share some final thoughts, and then we're going to wrap it up. Whoa, this is a new video. This is a fire. No, where is it? Oh, look at all these cars on fire at this mall because of an attack. Oh, look, Hamas released. Did I forget to show you? Yeah, I keep forgetting to bring it up. I'll get used to this. So here's what I was showing you before. The car's on fire. Why the hell would they put this logo right here? That's so annoying. And look at this. So Hamas released a video showing the paraglider. They seems to have a pretty good media. So this is a training video which means that Israeli intelligence should have been aware that this is happening. Let's see. This is an interesting analysis. This is presumably intended by Hamas to veto the Gulf Arab normalization process with Israel that the Palestinian Authority seems to cautiously support. Hamas vetoed the Oslo peace process in similar fashion some years ago. Interesting. I gave an analysis of what Hamas had to gain, but this was not part of it, and I think there might be something here. I think we saw this airstrike already. We saw this airstrike. So this is a photo of a Palestinian who's been killed. I don't know if it's an airstrike or somewhere else. So here's another tower that's been destroyed in an Israeli airstrike. Oh, Bibi finally made a statement. Let's listen.
לא בסבבים.
So this is in Hebrew. I'm going to listen to it and then I'll translate it.
מבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה.
This is not an operation, not an escalation. We are at war. This morning, Hamas launched a murderous attack on us.
אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון. הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. במקביל הוריתי לבצע גיוס מילואים נרחב ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב
So our first priority is securing the towns in the south and getting rid of the insurgents there. We've called reservists from all across the country, and we're going to retaliate in a way that our enemy has never before seen.
האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע מותו. אני קורא בינתיים לכל אזרחי ישראל להישמע בקפדנות להנחיות הצבא, להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה.
We are at war and we will win. That's what he said. He must be struggling. He fucked up badly. This is maybe the greatest stain on his already greatly stained long career. What else do we have? Yep, this isn't new stuff. Let's see what the news is saying. This is interesting. A Gaza-based journalist is reporting from within Israel. It's pretty brave, to just cross the border. He's not trying to harm anybody. He's just coming in to report. Yeah, I don't mind this. He's just being a courageous journalist, reporting from walked through the fence, came into town, and is reporting. He is risking his life, but good on him. Well, this is just hard. That's just hard to watch. Look at this photo. A woman in her bedroom. Yikes. Wow. Okay, let's see if there's any updates. Let's see. So it seems like there's reporting that nearly 200 wounded, but they're still not reporting on deaths. And, we suspect that it's going to be in the hundreds. 100 Israeli civilians dead by the end of the day. And again, I'm speculating that we'll probably cross the over 1,000 civilian deaths by the end of this escalation, which will take a few weeks. I'm going to read a few more comments, and then I'm going to give my final thoughts. So Callistos asks an interesting question. Are the Arabs one ethnic group or many different ethnic groups? So interestingly, I think both Jews and Arabs are like meta ethnicities that in them there's like subcategories. So not all Arabs are like the same ethnic group. Like Arab is more, it's a language. There's Arab culture, but the ethnicities under this culture and who speak this language is quite diverse. You have like Berbers in Morocco, Maronites, Arabs from the Arabian Peninsula, Levantine Arabs, right? They all have different DNA. And then you look at Jews, and it's also similar, right? You have Ashkenazi Jews, but even Ashkenazi DNA is mixed because there's Ashkenazi Jews from many different countries within Europe. And then you have Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews. You have Jews that lived right in Yemen for many years, in Morocco for many years, in Iraq, and Iran, and they all have slightly different DNA, but they all have a commonality DNA from the Levant thousands of years ago, which is interesting. Ed's asking, are you familiar with Rabbi Shapiro that does not believe you can be a Jew without being religious? No, I don't think I'm familiar with him, but yeah, I don't agree, but happy to hear his argument. Cool. So yeah, let's just end it with some thoughts. Definitely a sad day. A day that will go down in history. A day that, as bloody as it is only marking the beginning of this next round of violence. What can we expect? I've shared this a few times, but I assume there's some new people. We know that there's going to be a lot more rocket fire in Israel. We know that there's going to be massive amounts of airstrikes on Gaza. We could assume that the insurgency within Israel will end, if it hasn't already ended, will end relatively shortly. We don't know if Israel will do a ground invasion of Gaza. We don't know the extent of infighting within Israel between Jewish citizens of Israel and Palestinian citizens of Israel. This is one of the most concerning things because this could really escalate into a mini civil war amongst citizens of Israel. Right, keep in mind, you have Palestinians in the West Bank, you have Palestinians in Gaza, but then you have 20% of the population of Israel popular are Palestinian citizens of Israel. Some describe them as Israeli Arabs. Some describe them as Palestinians of Israel. They have differing identities depending on who you ask or depending on where they identify. That's a topic for another time. But 20% of Israel's citizens are Palestinian, and there's a great concern that there's going to be infighting. We know that this round of violence will only further radicalize both the populations, further traumatize the populations. It will bring us further away from peace. It will make the people less equipped psychologically for peace. It's very hard to make peace with somebody you fear and hate. So it doesn't end with the bloodshed. There's generational trauma that needs to be dealt with, and every round of violence makes it harder to deal with, right? That's one of the reasons why this conflict is so hard to solve. But we need to have hope, because we can't solve anything without hope. Despair doesn't lead us anywhere. So as long as peace is possible, we can find a way to make that happen. And it starts really by learning about the other side, understanding their narrative, accepting the legitimacy of their narrative. If you go on Twitter, if you go on social media, you'll see people polling, who do you support, Israel or Palestine? Or I support Israel, I support Palestine. All that is wrong. We should support Israel and Palestine. We should support the people of Israel and Palestine. That's what it's all about. Understanding the legitimacy of both narratives, understanding that both sides have done horrific things to one another, and really working towards a path of peace and reconciliation. It's not something that can happen overnight, and it's unclear when peace will happen, but that process should begin today. Well, maybe not today. Today's not a good day for that to start, but it needs to start sooner rather than later. And everyone can help to some extent, especially if you're living on the land, if you're an Israeli, make an effort to learn about Palestinians and make an effort to meet Palestinians, and vice versa. If every Israeli had a Palestinian friend and every Palestinian had an Israeli friend, then we'd have peace. And if you're not living on the land, you could still support with these messages of reconciliation by not fanning the flames of hate and radicalization. By trying to, share this perspective with others. And this approach is relevant to whatever conflict may exist in the nation you're living in. And I'll leave it with that. Wherever you are in the world, hope you're well. I will be coming on. I'll try to come on every day just to give updates. If you're new here, welcome. And with that, good night. Sending love to everyone around the world, everyone tuning in.